Chapter 1096. Wu Jueqing smiled lightly and said, "However, even if this was not done by the Tribulation Swordmaster, it is also a good thing that the big clans want to fight to the death with the Tribulation Swordmaster. So don't expose it." The Dharma Supreme smiled. "Brother Wu, you worry too much." Zhuge Tsangchong also didn't say that this was the doing of the Tribulation Swordmaster. However, no matter who is behind this, the fate energy that has been lost cannot be recovered. The only way is to extract it from tribulation. Only then can fate continue. That is why there is the saying of extracting fate energy against the heavens. Because even if it is the will of the heavens, as long as the fate energy of tribulation is extracted, it can still be continued. Wu Jueqing was stunned. He said, "Yes, I have been a villain for nothing." As he spoke, he laughed. "Let's go." The Dharma Supreme smiled lightly. The two of them, one in black and one in white, floated out of the door at the same time. The Dharma Supreme directly rose into the air and slowly left like a black cloud. Wu Jueqing, on the other hand, turned around and melted into the world of ice and snow, disappearing without a trace. He still used the method of concealing his tracks and went forward stealthily. The two of them were still one in the light and one in the dark. After all, there was still that unfathomable expert in the city. How would Wu Jueqing dare to let his guard down? The medicine banquet. The high priest was focused on the huge lotus above Chu Yang's head. The fate energy from all directions was still gathering. The lotus had already started to slowly change color, from the pure white to blue, and now towards red. Once the colors changed and turned back into a colorless white, the heaven-nourishing jade could be refined. At this critical juncture, the sound of the wind suddenly came. A voice outside said, "Lord Dharma Supreme, no one is allowed to enter during the medicine banquet." A slow voice said, "No matter. I am here to pay a visit to the High Priest and the Valley Master. There are some matters regarding the medicine banquet that I need to ask." The supreme martial artist guarding the door said, "Please wait for a moment, Lord Dharma Supreme. I will go and report." The High Consecrator heard it clearly and was instantly enraged. He stormed out angrily. "What's the matter?" The moment the High Priest came out, he asked the Dharma Supreme. His nose was not his nose, and his eyes were not his eyes. His expression was extremely ugly. For the medicine banquet this time around, one of the large clans was chased back by the Dharma Supreme, and thus became 8. The Ling clan was eliminated and thus became 7. There were also 2 pharmacists from the law enforcement officers. But just like the other 7 clans, they cheated and substituted one for another. But now, even his body had stiffened. The medicine banquet was almost ruined. The high priest had a belly full of anger. If he didn't vent it on the Dharma Supreme, who else could he vent it on? At this moment, the Valley Master of the Medicine Valley also hurriedly came out from the great heaven-reversing array. Frowning, he asked, "Lord Dharma Supreme, what's the matter?" The Dharma Supreme was not angered by these 2 people's provocation. Instead, he smiled and said, "I am here to ask if the medicine banquet's extraction of fortune from the pharmacists will affect the fortune of the big clans." "Nonsense! Nonsense!" The high priest and the valley master opened their mouths to refute at the same time, spitting out so much saliva that it almost washed the Dharma Supreme's face. Firstly, it's used to absorb alchemists' luck and gather them to overturn the heavens. It's not extracted. The Valley Master said with a solemn face, after the medicine banquet, this portion of luck will still have to be returned. Secondly, the medicine banquet, from a certain perspective, is for the benefit of the big clans. How can it affect the big clans? Thirdly, when the array was set up, the Medicine Valley only provided the array blueprint. The array was completely completed by the big clans and law enforcement officers. Whether or not the fortune of the big clans will be extracted, how can we, the Medicine Valley, decide? Even if we do, it's the big clans seeking their own deaths. Fourthly, if the Dharma Supreme does not believe, you can check the array. The Valley Master said firmly, Lord Dharma Supreme also has the array blueprint. If you find any flaws in the array, please go and settle the score with the person who set up the array. The Dharma Supreme smiled bitterly. I'm just asking. I would also like to ask Lord Dharma Supreme. The high priest had already lost his patience. The people sent by the big clans and law enforcement officers have all used the soul transfer technique. I wonder what Lord Dharma Supreme thinks about this matter. The Dharma Supreme's gaze instantly turned sharp. There's actually such a thing. How dare they? The high priest sneered. The medicine banquet this time was almost ruined by these greedy people. I don't know who was the one who ate too much lard and lost his mind. With his short-sighted eyes, he came up with such an idiotic idea and did such a despicable thing that could end one's bloodline. They should implicate their entire clan and deserve to die. Lord Dharma Supreme, please investigate thoroughly. The Dharma Supreme's temples twitched. He glared at the high priest and said furiously, What a bastard! I will definitely investigate to the bottom. With that, he left in a huff and said, Let me see if there are any flaws in the array. He left hurriedly. The Valley Master looked at the high priest, and both of them smiled at each other. He sent a telepathic message. How does it feel to scold the Dharma Supreme to his face? The high priest's anger dissipated completely. His old face smiled like a chrysanthemum, and he nodded vigorously. Great. Both of them were not fools. Who else could command the law enforcement officers and the big clans at the same time other than the Dharma Supreme? Now, the high priest pointed at the monk and scolded him as a bald donkey, venting his anger. The Dharma Supreme walked one round around the array and did not find anything unusual. He stood at the top and observed for a while, but also did not find anything wrong. He directly disrupted his divine sense and used his original divine sense to check the fate energy, but did not find anything extracted from the big clans. He only saw that the fate energy of countless pharmacists in the world was converging here continuously. Every trace was very weak. The Dharma Supreme shook his head and finally landed. How is it? The high priest rolled his eyes and asked. There's no problem. The Dharma Supreme frowned. But the ancestral tombs of the big clans suddenly collapsed and no one was spared. The fate energy of all the clans was all gone. What is going on? Ah, there's such a thing. The high priest and the Valley Master looked at each other. Then the high priest said, We don't know about that. Besides, this matter has nothing much to do with the Medicine Valley. Oh, right, Lord Dharma Supreme. The fate energy of the Medicine Valley has not been completely extracted, right? The Dharma Supreme's gaze was deep. Such a thing did not happen to the Medicine Valley. That's good. That's good. The high priest and the Valley Master were beaming with joy, as if relieved of a heavy burden. The Dharma Supreme could not stay any longer and left in a huff. Inside, the two old men looked at each other and smiled. Both of them blew their beards loudly and laughed silently, winking at each other happily. The great heaven-turning array, a cloud of mist. Wu Jueching's white figure suddenly appeared under Chu Yang's stone pillar. Looking up at the huge lotus above, he murmured, The fate energy lotus is almost complete. If it is destroyed now, the 1,000-year plan will be ruined in an instant. She frowned and floated up to Chu Yang. Then she looked at Chu Yang's face. There was pain on Chu Yang's face. There were also faint 7 colors, gathering and dispersing at times. However, they did not completely disperse, nor did they completely gather. Wu Jueching was puzzled. It was obvious that he was poisoned and had not been cured. However, it had already greatly delayed and controlled the poison. What was the reason? He saw that Chu Yang was holding a small jade bottle with a purple crystal core in his hands. Could the reason be from this small bottle? Wu Jueching frowned. The jade bottle with the purple crystal core opened silently. A fresh fragrance came out from inside. It actually had the rhythm of life. No wonder. No wonder you could temporarily cure my poison. So you have the spiritual spring water in you." Wu Jueqing was relieved. He actually smiled slightly and murmured, "Since it's not the Tribulation Sword Master, it seems like I can only deal with it after the medicine banquet." With a flash, he disappeared without a trace. Wu Jueqing had already left for a while. Chu Yang's eyes were still closed, but a thin layer of sweat had quietly seeped out of his forehead. He did not expect this guy to really come. This situation was really dangerous. If not for the fact that the medicine banquet was to deal with the Tribulation Sword Master, he would probably have turned into dust with just a casual slap. Wu Jueqing had just left when the high priest and the valley master came in and looked at the lotus above Chu Yang's head from afar. Both of them looked solemn. It had already changed to the 5th color. "Are the preparations almost done?" asked the valley master. "Almost done." The high priest's face was solemn and serious. "When it changes to the 8th color and has enough fate energy, we can activate the ultimate form of the great heaven-turning formation. We can draw in the primordial energy and gather the 1,000-year fate energy of the pharmacists to start refining medicine. At that time, all the supreme martial artists will need to come in and do it at the same time. They will be divided into batches and throw 810,000 elixirs into the lotus. The lotus will change color again and become the lotus of heavenly mandate. At the last moment, you and I will use the momentum to stir the elixirs and gather the power of fate energy. The lotus of heavenly mandate will immediately react and merge with the heaven and earth. It will adjust yin and yang and gather the wind and clouds. Then we can refine the heaven-nourishing jade." The valley master nodded deeply and let out a long breath. "The medicine banquet this time is finally a success. The process is really unbearable to look back on." The high priest snorted and said, "This time it's all thanks to Chu Yang. Valley master, can't you see that he is still poisoned at this moment? He is using his willpower to support himself and not collapse. We must thank him properly for this success." The valley master nodded. "Of course." Then he said, "Since the outcome is decided, I can now go out and announce that the champion of the medicine banquet is Chu Yang." The high priest didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Everyone else is dead. If he is not the champion, who else can it be? The valley master laughed and turned to leave. Both of them were relaxed at this moment, but they knew very well that the danger of this medicine banquet had completely exceeded the sum of the previous 1,000 years. But some things couldn't be said openly after all. Outside, the snow was still falling. On the ground, there was another thick layer of snow on top of the foundation of the original snow. But there were still many people looking forward to the final announcement of the champion. The voice of the valley master of the medicine valley rang out at this moment. "The finals of the medicine banquet have come to an end. The champion of this year's medicine banquet, the #1 pharmacist in the world, is..." Chapter 1097. The voice of the valley master of the medicine valley spread far and wide, and even the snowflakes fluttering in the air turned into powder. "Ah, wahaha!" A red shadow jumped up happily from afar, dancing and somersaulting on the top of a big tree. Chu Yang succeeded. Wahaha! Mo Qinggu was extremely happy. Her beloved brother Chu Yang won the medicine banquet that all the pharmacists in the heavens competed for. Mo Qinggu was even happier than becoming a supreme martial artist herself. For a moment, the little girl was so happy that her heart was about to explode. She grabbed Bu Liuqing's sleeve and laughed and jumped. "Master, Chu Yang succeeded. He succeeded." Bu Liuqing narrowed his eyes and wanted to say something, but he rolled his eyes and said, "How did it become Chu Yang, not Brother Chu Yang?" Mo Qinggu was embarrassed. "Master, you're so annoying." She stomped her feet and turned around, but she still couldn't help but feel happy. After being shy for a while, she cheered again. In the other direction, Han Shaoran laughed heartily and was extremely happy. The Southeast law enforcement officers could finally hold their heads high this time. Some people were happy, while others were frustrated. Chu Yang won the championship, and the big clans were all a little unhappy, especially a few elders who were even more nervous. Chu Yang won the championship, which meant that a part of the heaven-nourishing jade would fall into his hands. That was a good item that could reverse life and death. The 8 second grandmasters sighed at the same time and turned to leave in the wind and snow. They were ready to take action. If they really couldn't do it, then they could only kill Chu Yang and ambush Zixieqing together. In the heaven-turning array, the lotus on top of Chu Yang's head was already faintly turning yellow. Yellow was the 8th color. The 9th color was pink. After pink, it was white. The high priest stared at the lotus above Chu Yang's head without blinking. He held his breath and clenched his fists tightly. He was waiting for the moment when it turned yellow to activate its ultimate form. At this moment, the high priest only felt his heart thumping and his mouth dry. Finally, the color of the lotus suddenly turned yellow. The high priest couldn't help but be excited. He shouted with a red face, "Open!" He gave the order. All the supreme martial artists outside attacked together. They all slammed their palms into the ground. This palm strike was different from any other palm strike. Instead, it was formed purely from the life energy of the Supremes. Even the snowflakes on the uppermost layer did not tremble when the palm struck the ground. However, the vigorous power had already silently gathered underground. Then it abruptly converged together, converging at a certain point underground. That point was where the ultimate eye of the formation was located. In an instant, an illusory, pure white lotus flower slowly bloomed from an unknown location underground and slowly rose up. The high consecrator leaped and arrived in front of Chu Yang. He reminded him in a low voice, "Chu Yang, release all your defenses and prepare to draw the primordial energy into your body. Refine the heaven-nourishing jade." Chu Yang nodded heavily. Then he let go of all his defenses, with the power of heaven and earth to clear the top. The next moment, that huge lotus floated up from the ground and dispersed into nothingness. It then fused with the lotus on top of Chu Yang's head with a schwa sound. The lotus on top of Chu Yang's head issued a slight trembling sound and suddenly doubled in size. Then the lotus turned from yellow to pink. From the heart of the lotus, 3 streams of blazing white aura suddenly shot out. They broke through the formation and spiraled into the sky, turning into an inseparable stream that rushed into the clouds. The white light disappeared without a trace. Then a mysterious chant sounded in the sky, as if it came from the deepest part of everyone's heart. The chant became louder and louder, more and more intense. In the end, it finally filled the whole world. Just at the peak, it suddenly stopped. At the same time, a purple aura, mysterious, ancient, and powerful, appeared. From the clouds far away, it broke through the snowflakes and fell straight into the heaven-turning formation. It connected the heaven and earth tightly. Waves of mysterious aura were aimed at the top of Chu Yang's head and rushed down fiercely. "It's coming, it's coming." The sword spirit was fully focused. He held the calamity sword in his hand, ready to intercept this purple spiritual energy at any time. This was the most original source of energy in the whole world, the source of all life. It was already a shocking move that the medicine banquet could be brought down. It was impossible to intercept it. No one could absorb such a vast amount of energy in the form of a human body. It could only return to the sky after the medicine banquet, which was equivalent to a trip to the human world. But the sword spirit was different. The sword spirit did not belong to the human body, the heavenly Tao, and the netherworld. And the calamity sword in his hand was even more mysterious and powerful. Together with Chu Yang, the sword master, the sword spirit had the right to intercept this primordial violet vapor. Although it was still a little risky, the sword spirit would definitely not let go of such an opportunity. This was really a blessing from the heavens. Letting it go was a sin. The purple spiritual energy surged into his head. Chu Yang only felt that his spirit and consciousness were being cleansed at the same time. His whole body was ironed, as if he was soaking in a hot spring when he was exhausted to the extreme. Wherever the purple aura passed, countless small black stains appeared on the surface of Chu Yang's skin. Those were the impurities in his body. Under the cleansing of such purple aura, all of it was expelled. If not for the Calamity Sword, the cleansing of his body and the removal of impurities would have been the greatest benefit this #1 pharmacist had. The purple aura entered his body. The next moment, the sword spirit started to get busy. He suddenly let go of the Calamity Sword. The Calamity Sword scattered into scattered light and entered Chu Yang's meridians. The sword spirit sat down cross-legged and attached all his spirit power to the Calamity Sword that had already entered Chu Yang's meridians. The next moment, the surging primordial violet vapor swept over from the top of Chu Yang's head with an overwhelming force. His meridians immediately turned into an overwhelming wave of violet vapor. The Calamity Sword trembled slightly, as if an extremely thirsty person had jumped into a clear and sweet lake and gulped it down. The sword spirit's spirit power was constantly channeled, constantly extracting the violet vapor that the Calamity Sword had swallowed and pouring it into the Calamity space. The speed of the movement was so fast that it could be channeled back and forth dozens of times in an instant. It was like a rat in a huge oil depot, diligently and tirelessly stealing soybean oil from its rat hole. Furthermore, the opportunity could not be missed. At this moment, the sword spirit was using all his strength to steal crazily. The result of such a theft was that the primordial violet vapor entered Chu Yang's head and went down in order. It should have circled around his body and entered the huge lotus of heavenly mandate from the gushing spring. It should have ripened and completed the refinement of the heaven-nourishing jade. However, the sword spirit's desperate theft actually caused the primordial violet vapor to not leak out for a long time. The high priest stared intently at the lotus of heavenly mandate and observed the progress of the primordial violet vapor. After seeing no reaction for a long time, he couldn't help but feel strange. What's going on? Why is the primordial violet vapor so slow this time? The old man muttered to himself. Everything was happening inside Chu Yang's body. Even with his fiery golden eyes, the high priest couldn't see it. Who would have thought that the hard work of him, the big clans and law enforcement officers for 1,000 years would be used by someone in secret? The sword spirit was desperately stealing the violet vapor. However, there was really too much of such spiritual energy. After a short while, after it got used to Chu Yang's meridians, it completely drowned the Calamity Sword and the sword spirit in purple waves. The Calamity Sword and the sword spirit were like reefs sinking to the bottom of a crazy tide. Above their heads, the violet vapor flowed past endlessly. The sword spirit maintained a high speed of theft. It displayed a theft technique that even Rue Budong's 2 famous teachers would be shocked to death. It kept extracting, circulating, putting down, returning again above Chu Yang's head. The primordial violet vapor was crazily pouring down. Finally, Chu Yang felt a heat in the soles of his feet. 2 streams of violet vapor poured out from the soles of his feet and poured into the lotus of heavenly mandate. It's finally out. The high priest looked at the violet vapor and finally heaved a sigh of relief. Damn it, it's even more difficult than a woman giving birth. The violet vapor poured into the lotus of heavenly mandate endlessly. The lotus instantly turned completely pink. Then it slowly turned pure, white petal by petal. The high priest clapped his hands and shouted, "All of you, come in!" At his command, 10 supreme martial artists came in at the same time. "Don't move. Everyone, guard a pile of herbs and listen to my command." The high priest was so nervous that he was stuttering. He stared at the lotus of heavenly mandate. As every petal of the lotus turned pure white, his mouth opened wider and wider. At this moment, he didn't even have the time to breathe. The next moment, the primordial violet vapor poured in. the last lotus petal turned pure white. The entire lotus suddenly emitted a dazzling, holy white light. Then it started to spin slowly. Slowly, it spun faster and faster. Slowly, the shape of the lotus could no longer be seen clearly. Swoosh! All the pharmacist's fate energy entered the lotus petal in an orderly manner at this moment. Do it! Under extreme nervousness, the high priest's voice became that of a duck. He gave the order like a chicken waiting to be slaughtered. The 10 supreme martial artists lifted the piles of spirit herbs beside them at the same time. They rose into the air and were about to throw them into the rapidly spinning lotus. After putting them in, they immediately came down and picked up another pile. They did this a few times. All 81 types of spirit herbs entered the lotus of heavenly mandate. Not even a single bubble appeared. Furthermore, it seemed to have completely disappeared. The lotus flashed. At this moment, the colors changed back and forth continuously. It was as if a huge neon light was spinning in the sky. A strong fragrance spread out fiercely. The lotus of heavenly mandate was finally completed. Chapter 1098. The Valley Master and High Priest flew above the lotus and focused their attention on the direction of the lotus. The next moment, the two of them shouted in unison and struck out with their white rods. The two of them stood opposite each other in the air. As the lotus of heavenly mandate rotated, their bodies also rotated and instantly turned into two shadows. The space of tribulation was already filled with purple energy. The dense purple chi seemed to have condensed into a substance. At this moment, all the medicinal herbs seemed to have been reborn as they grew rapidly. The spiritual spring water gurgled and actually started to turn into a faint milky white color. The white spiritual energy in the space of tribulation was first compressed and then directly expelled. Disappearing without a trace, the entire space of tribulation became a heaven of purple energy, and the sword spirit was still tirelessly moving it here, continuously moving it here, in the air above the lotus of heavenly mandate. The Valley Master and High Priest were already dizzy from the rotation and were trying their best. The two old men were extremely puzzled. What's going on? In the past, the heaven-nourishing jade would be formed after 100 rounds in 8,000 years. Why is it that after more than 3,000 rounds this time, the heaven-nourishing jade is still not formed? This is really, really strange. How could the two of them know that originally it would at most take a few hundred rounds this time? But the problem was that there was an extra super thief. Almost 1/3 of the primordial purple vapor was taken away. The power of heaven and earth was seriously insufficient. They could only use time to make up for it. And using time to make up for it, the two old men were rotated a little more. Not just a little more, but a lot more. Finally, the primordial purple vapor above Chu Yang's head slowly weakened in the center of the lotus. Then a sparkling and translucent object was slowly lifted up from the ground. Slowly, it reached a height of 10 feet above the lotus. It was like jade, but not jade. It was like substance, but not substance. It was like liquid, but not liquid, all in all. Chu Yang felt that it was somewhat similar to the mysterious ice jade ointment of the great miracle medicine. However, it was much, much more powerful than the mysterious ice jade ointment. The next moment, the lotus of heavenly mandate suddenly disappeared and turned into a rainbow light. He had entered this strange place. Then, this strange object suddenly emitted a bright light. It lit up the entire hall. The heaven-nourishing jade was finally formed. It slowly floated in the air. In the sky, the purple gas from the top to the bottom suddenly disappeared. A cloud of dense purple chi separated from the heaven-nourishing jade. It was as if it was escaping, moving at lightning speed. Battered and exhausted, he rushed out of the hall and disappeared into the boundless void. This is too frightening. Damn, there's actually someone here who's waiting to take us in. The high priest and the valley lord fell to the ground at the same time with a thud. The two old men shook their heads and felt dizzy for a long time before they came back to their senses. He was really dizzy. The high priest stood up, but he still felt dizzy as he walked around in a circle. He sat down on the ground again, panting heavily. Holding his head, he cursed. Damn it! Really evil this time. I was spun around 13,000 times. Even with my supreme martial artist cultivation, my head almost exploded from the spinning. The Valley Master smiled bitterly, supporting himself with one hand. She tried her best to endure the dizziness and nausea. Panting, she said, "You're still counting?" The high priest spat and said, "How can I not count? Valley Lord, if you do this again next time, let second brother do it. I won't do it even if you beat me to death. If I do it again, I'll definitely lose my life." The Valley Master laughed. The two of them calmed down. Finally, they stood up and could raise their heads. Looking at the spinning heaven-nourishing jade, the Valley Master sighed. The heaven-nourishing jade this time is completely perfect. It was incomparably perfect, and why was it so big? It's more than twice as big as the previous ones. The high priest also looked at it and frowned. It's big indeed. Why do I feel like it's only half complete? Missing half? It's always a full circle. Why is it missing half this time? It's only a semicircle? I really don't know about that. But although it's a semicircle this time, it's enough. The Valley Master said with relief. Quickly let this little brother come down. Go and cut the heaven-nourishing jade. Leave the part that's used to nourish the heavens and leave a small piece for the Valley Lord. The rest are all for Chuyang. This is the rule for nourishing the heavens. The high priest was a little reluctant. Giving him so much. This little guy is so lucky. This is what they deserve. The Valley Lord said solemnly. The high priest smiled embarrassedly. I'm just kidding. In a place that no one knew about in the tribulation space. Good stuff, good stuff. The sword spirit held the semicircle lovingly. Although he was so tired that he was panting, he was beaming with joy. If the Valley Master and the high priest saw this, they would definitely be shocked. The thing in the sword spirit's hands was the heaven-nourishing jade. Exactly half of it. Even Chuyang didn't know how the sword spirit managed to cut half of the heaven-nourishing jade in front of everyone. At this moment, he was asking in the tribulation space. The moment Chuyang entered the tribulation space, what greeted him was the almost liquid-like primordial violet vapor. He choked and almost couldn't breathe. The purple energy was so pure that it made Chuyang choke on his breath. It was as if he had suddenly swallowed a mouthful of sticky rice and stuffed his windpipe. Cough, cough, cough. Chuyang was shocked. So much primordial violet vapor? The sword spirit said proudly, when you were performing the empowerment, I stole it. Halfway through, I stole enough violet vapor to improve the tribulation space and completely change its nature. But to be on the safe side, I stole half more. With so much violet vapor, it would be a waste not to steal it. Chuyang fainted. No wonder I felt that the violet vapor empowerment didn't have any other benefits other than expelling impurities. Chuyang said impatiently, so you stole it all here. You still want to absorb it directly? The sword spirit looked at Chuyang as if he was looking at an alien. Aren't you afraid that you'll explode? Chuyang rubbed his nose. What's going on? He pointed at the heaven-nourishing jade. How did you cut it? Chuyang was extremely surprised. The sword spirit snorted and said, Isn't this a piece of cake? Now that I'm moving at full speed, even the Dharma Supreme may not be able to catch my shadow. How did you see it? After bragging for a while, he said, the moment the heaven-nourishing jade was formed and the violet vapor dissipated, I made my move. The sword spirit hugged the heaven-nourishing jade tiredly and snorted. How can the heaven-nourishing jade refined by the tribulation, sword master, not even have half of it? That's too easy for them. With this piece of jade, so many lives will be saved. After he finished speaking, only then did he carry the heaven-nourishing jade and place it beside the divine bone golden hand. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief. Outside, the high consecrata, soared into the air. Hugging the heaven-nourishing jade in his arms, he descended slowly. Just this hug already made him feel comfortable all over. The Valley Master flew up personally and came to Chu Yang's side. He said gently, "Brother Chu, the refining of the heaven-nourishing jade has been completed. You can rest for a while. At the same time, this old man will take a look at how to get rid of your poison." Chu Yang was interrogating the sword spirit when he heard this. He hurriedly returned his consciousness to his body and said, "Thank you, Valley Master." The Valley Master was afraid that Chu Yang would be affected after being poisoned. He directly carried him and floated down. With a face full of gratitude, he said, "You've worked hard." Then he diagnosed the 7 shades poison in Chu Yang's body. He frowned and said, "Brother Chu, this poison of yours, although it is temporarily suppressed, however, it is still a serious problem. If you use the heaven-nourishing jade to absorb it, it will be a little overkill. Let me slowly think of a way." Chu Yang revealed a generous smile and said, "The heaven-nourishing jade has a great responsibility. For the heavens, for all living beings in the world, for the common people, and for the fortune of all the pharmacists in the past 1,000 years. The heaven-nourishing jade should be kept for greater use." The Valley Master was filled with deep veneration. Little Brother is indeed chivalrous. Such a character does not disgrace the title of #1 pharmacist in the world. Chu Yang said fearfully, "I was just lucky. In terms of pharmacology, I am far inferior to the Valley Master and the High Priests. Such an honor. How can I dare to accept it?" The Valley Master admired him more and more. Such a pure and flawless young hero. No matter what, he had to get close to him. He said, "Little brother, since you are the first and have successfully cultivated the heaven-nourishing jade, you are fully deserving of this title. Not only that, from today onwards, you are the Medicine Valley's High Priest. You are ranked 7th High Priest." As he said, he took out a jade token. "Brother Chu, this is your identity token. As long as you have this, you can enter and leave the Medicine Valley at will. You have the right to enjoy all the resources of the Medicine Valley." Chu Yang received it with a look of reverence and awe. At this moment, the High Priest finally came out. He held a purple crystal jade core plate with 5 palm-sized pieces of heaven-nourishing jade on it. He handed it to Chu Yang with some heartache. "Brother Chu, this is the heaven-nourishing jade you deserve." Chu Yang was very honest. He said awkwardly, This is not good. Why don't the 3 of us divide it equally?" The High Priest was very happy at once. He patted Chu Yang's shoulder. "Nonsense. This belongs to you alone. The 2 of us did not do anything. Why should we divide it equally? Besides, the Medicine Valley has its own reserves." If Chu Yang had accepted it without saying anything, the High Priest would inevitably be heartbroken. But now that Chu Yang said this, he immediately felt his heart warm up. Chu Yang looked awkwardly as the High Priest stuffed the heaven-nourishing jade into his arms. He spoke incoherently, his face red. "This is not good. This is not good." This expression was simply that of an innocent little virgin. The High Priest stuffed it into Chu Yang's arms without any explanation. Then he patted his shoulder. "Brother Chu, when you are done, you must come to the Medicine Valley for a visit." Chu Yang said sincerely, "Of course I must go." After giving some instructions, Chu Yang reluctantly took his leave, saying that he would think of a way to cure the poison and try not to use the heaven-nourishing jade as much as possible. The Valley Master urged him to come to the Medicine Valley for a visit. Then he explained some of the benefits of being the top pharmacist, including the status of a law enforcement officer and a doctor, which was equivalent to that of a law enforcement master. In short, all these benefits would be fulfilled after the heaven-nourishing jade core was repaid. Chu Yang beamed with joy as he agreed. Then he walked out in high spirits. Behind him, the High Priest and the Valley Master looked at his back view. They stroked their beards and sighed in relief. What a smart and sensible child. Little did they know that the person they had just sent away was the most black-hearted and the one who had benefited the most. In this way, almost 2/3 of the heaven-nourishing jade had fallen into Chu Yang's hands. Also, almost 1/3 of the primordial violet vapor had been taken by him. This small fortune that he had made in secret had already made him a little embarrassed. To be continued. Chapter 1099. When Chu Yang walked out of the sky-turning array, he still felt like he was in a dream. Outside it was snowing heavily. The entire world was a vast expanse. The dancing snowflakes hit Chu Yang's face, giving him a tranquil and ethereal feeling. He didn't use any martial arts, but just trudged out of the snow at the speed of an ordinary person. In such a hazy place, Chu Yang's mind was exceptionally clear. After thinking about what happened here, he recalled Mo Qingwu's strange dream and that mysterious top talent in his previous life, Shuelehan. There must be a connection, Chu Yang thought to himself. From afar, a few gazes looked at him at the same time. Bu Liuqing's eyes were like an eagle's, staring at Chu Yang, who was trudging through the snow. Even Bu Liuqing couldn't see, clearly from a distance of 10,000 feet. He could only lock onto Chu Yang's position with his aura. Chu Yang got first place. Now that he came out, it proved that he had the heaven-nourishing jade. There would definitely be people who wanted the heaven-nourishing jade. Therefore, Chu Yang was in a very dangerous situation now. On the other side, Feng Yuro and Yuling Xue stood side by side in the snow. Their expressions were somewhat complicated. The heaven-nourishing jade has finally been refined. Feng Yuro seemed to be mumbling to herself. Yes, Yuling Xue's handsome face flashed with a trace of solemnity. For 100,000 years, all the Dharma Supremes have given their all in order to assist the Tribulation Sword Master. If the seniors knew that only the two of us are left among the law enforcement officers, and the rest have already given up on this goal, how would they feel? How would they feel? Will they cry at the same time? But no matter what, we have to adhere to Master's wishes. Master's last instructions before he died were to uphold the mission of the law enforcement officers and assist the Tribulation Sword Master to make this continent peaceful. Feng Yuro smiled and said in the wind and snow, "The nourishing of the heavens will begin 3 days later." Yuling Xue looked up and removed his defense, letting the cold snowflakes stick to his face. Feeling the chill, he said, "We will take action at that time." He paused and said in a heavy tone, "It's also possible for us. This battle will be the last battle. Ro, are you scared?" Feng Yuro took a deep breath. She looked at her husband gently and said with a hint of guilt, "I'm not afraid. It's just that what I regret the most is that I couldn't leave behind a male and female bloodline for you," Yuling Xue smiled. "Even if it's Sun Wandai. But many years later, they all returned to dust. Ro! Look, there are many people in this world with many, many surnames. However, after 100,000 years, there are already many surnames. It could no longer be seen on this continent, because they don't have daughters, or perhaps they only have daughters and no sons. Once they marry, they follow their husbands. Thus, they don't have the surname of their maiden family. Only large clans can pass it down. But slowly, as the world changes, large clans will also disappear." Yuling Xue said indifferently, "So what if he disappeared? Now it's gone." Even if they disappeared after tens of millions of years, they would still disappear. The death of a person was like the extinguishment of a lamp. Even if there was another world, it no longer belonged to this place. Why bother? Feng Yuro listened in a daze. Her eyes reddened. "I didn't think so much. I just want to have a child of my own." Yuling Xue heaved a long sigh and said, "If we don't die today, you will have a child." The two of them leaned against each other. Feng Yuro slowly snuggled into her husband's arms and remained silent. She enjoyed the peace and quiet before the great battle. Chu Yang walked out step by step. Another 300 feet, and he would be out of the Medicine Valley's perimeter. Around him, there was a strong aura. Those were the experts of the large clans preparing to strike. Chu Yang was long prepared for this. A mocking smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. I know what you want to do, but if I can't even think of this if you succeed, then what am I doing? Somewhere far away, a long roar suddenly sounded, breaking through the air. The wind and snow were shattered from the air. The wind and snow in front suddenly rumbled. A white figure, like a hurricane, galloped over in the wind and snow. Its speed was as fast as the wind and lightning. Its entire body was wrapped in wind and snow. Its figure and face could not be seen clearly. In fact, no aura was emitted. Before anyone could react, this white figure was already 300 feet in front of Chu Yang. Far away, Bu Luqing shouted in shock and anger, "Not good!" Suddenly, he kicked off and his body shot out like an arrow. In the air, he roared, "How dare you, coward!" Sword light shot out wildly from his hands. It formed a huge light sword that could cut through heaven and earth, flying through the air. Help Chu Yang. Yu Lingxue and Feng Yuro also realized that something was wrong and attacked at the same time. But that white figure was really too fast. Just as they reacted, that white figure was already in front of Chu Yang. It let out a long roar and laughed loudly. Heaven-nourishing jade. It's mine. Bam! Chu Yang flew out without any strength to fight back. That person's palm was like a ravine, grabbing Chu Yang's clothes. With a tug, Chu Yang's clothes were torn to shreds. It seemed as if many things had fallen out of Chu Yang's clothes. That person used his hand to catch them. Without slowing down, he shot up into the sky. A blurry white figure flashed in the air and disappeared. A hearty laughter shook the heavens and disappeared into the distance. Two figures, one black and one white, chased after him from two different directions. They were the Dharma Supreme and Wu Jiueqing. The two of them had been paying attention for a long time. When they saw such a situation, and the fact that the white-robed person was unfamiliar, there was no such person in their memories, the two of them chased after him at the same time. If they could get the heaven-nourishing jade back, it would be theirs. Immediately, the furious Bu Luqing and Yu Lingxue chased after him with all their might. Aft! Wah! Only then did Chu Yang fall into the snow. There was a sweet taste in his throat, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He lay on the snow, trembling all over. His face was pale and bloodless. Feng Yuro landed beside him with a swoosh. She immediately took his pulse, and her expression relaxed. Thank goodness. I just wanted to snatch something. At this moment, a few figures landed at the same time. They looked at Chu Yang with complicated gazes. They were the supreme martial artist experts of the big clans. Chu Yang woke up and asked in a trembling voice, "What happened?" "Ah, where's my heaven-nourishing jade? Where's my storage ring?" Feng Yuro sighed and said, "Brother Bu and the others have already gone after him. I hope they can get it back." Chu Yang was dazed. Who is that person? This question. It was also the question that everyone was most puzzled about. Who was that person? Judging from his speed just now, he was much faster than them. At the very least, he was also a supreme martial artist expert. What are you all doing here? Feng Yuro's face turned cold. Looking at the dozens of 7th grade supreme martial artists of the big clans around her, her eyebrows gradually raised. She was already anxious, and now this happened. Seeing these people again, she was really angry. Get lost. These people saw that Chu Yang's clothes were torn, and he was almost naked. Even the ring on his finger was snatched away. There was also a big scratch. It must have been left behind when the ring was snatched away. It was obvious. Now, Chu Yang couldn't hide anything on his body. It looked like they had all been robbed. Since that was the case, everyone was relieved. How could they still be interested in staying here and looking at Feng Yuro's face? They apologized one after another. In an instant, everyone left without a trace. All of them were gloating to the extreme. Who asked you to be so awesome? You deserved it. You were robbed. How satisfying! Ha ha ha! The Valley Master and the High Priest hurried over. What's going on? Chu Yang said dejectedly, robbed. The heaven-nourishing jade is gone. The Valley Master and the High Priest sighed deeply. A red shadow flashed, and Mo Qingwu anxiously squeezed in. Chu Yang, does it hurt? The little girl's face was full of worry. She moved closer to Chu Yang and inquired about his well-being. At this moment, she was actually infinitely gentle. It's okay, as long as you're fine. The heaven-nourishing jade is nothing, it's okay. She didn't sound like Chu Yang was older than her. Instead, it sounded like she was much older than Chu Yang. Chu Yang smiled bitterly and held her little hand. I'm fine, as long as you're fine. Mo Qingwu said gently, in my heart, the heaven-nourishing jade can't even compare to a strand of your hair. As she said, she smiled easily. In her smile, there was too much comfort and a calming power. Feng Yuro looked at Mo Qingwu. She sighed in her heart. This girl may be young, but this kind of understanding, this kind of consideration, this kind of devotion. Qianqian's identity is a little awkward. I'm afraid I really can't compete with her for anything. Bu Luqing and Yu Lingxue gave chase together. Bu Liuqing's cultivation was high. Riding on the sword light, he left Yu Lingxue behind almost as soon as he started. But Yu Lingxue had always been fast. He actually followed behind and caught up quickly. Both of them were furious. It was too embarrassing. 3 peak-level supreme martial artists were guarding here, and someone actually robbed them right in front of them. This made both of them feel ashamed. But there was also a deep doubt in their hearts. Who exactly is this person? This person's cultivation is a little too scary. They rushed hundreds of miles in one breath. There was no trace left in front of them. Bu Luqing and Yu Lingxue stopped in their tracks. They couldn't catch up. A deep anger rose from their hearts. Both of them were livid and didn't speak. In front of them, 2 figures returned empty-handed. Seeing Bu Luqing and Yu Lingxue here, they seemed to pause for a moment and then came over. Dharma Supreme. Bu Luqing shouted, You did it! The extremely aggrieved Supreme Martial Artist, Bu, was obviously trying to vent his anger on the Dharma Supreme. As if he couldn't catch the rabbit and cook the dog, the one coming over was the Dharma Supreme. Beside him, there was a man in white. His robe was wide and his face couldn't be seen clearly. He was slightly behind the Dharma Supreme. He gave off a feeling that this person's status was lower than the Dharma Supreme's. To be continued. Chapter 1100. The Dharma Supreme smiled bitterly. If I really did it, it's understandable that Brother Bu wants to vent his anger on me. The problem is I didn't do it, and I am also chasing after that person. Bu Luqing saw that the Dharma Supreme was willing to put aside his pride to explain, so he was embarrassed to deliberately slander him. Because Bu Luqing had clearly seen the Dharma Supreme and this person in white chasing after him, he asked sullenly, Who is this person? I didn't see clearly. The Dharma Supreme said solemnly, The only thing I can be sure of is that this person's cultivation is definitely not below yours and mine, and his speed is even faster than yours and mine. Bu Luqing said angrily, Nonsense. If he was not as fast as us, he would have been caught by you long ago. If he was not fast enough, we would have caught up with him long ago. You have been the Dharma Supreme for more than 10,000 years. Are you so used to talking nonsense? The Dharma Supreme was not angry. Brother Bu, you know that I am telling the truth. I am asking you, who is this person? Bu Luqing asked angrily. I don't know. The Dharma Supreme shook his head. You don't know? Bu Luqing and Yu Lingxue were shocked. The most powerful intelligence network in the world was in the hands of the Dharma Supreme. There was even information about every martial king in it. The law enforcement officers' database was cleared every 3 days. If there were any major changes, it would be reported to the Dharma Supreme immediately. All the information about Supreme Martial Artists and above were cleared once a day and reported to the Dharma Supreme immediately. If even the Dharma Supreme did not know this person's background, then it was really mysterious. In the heavens, there should not be such a person. The Dharma Supreme took a breath. In short, such a person should not exist. This is the most strange thing. Yes. This time, even Buluching nodded repeatedly. In this world, the so-called reclusive experts and peerless experts who could shock the world with a single move did not exist. Because when a person practiced martial arts, he would have to cultivate. After cultivating for a period of time, he would need to improve through battles, regardless of technique. It was still a matter of comprehension. What one could comprehend in a life and death battle would always be much more than what one could comprehend alone. It could not be compared at all. The higher the level, the more so. Cultivating behind closed doors would never make one an expert, not to mention becoming an expert, like Buluching. Therefore, as long as one was an expert, he would definitely be experienced in battles. This was the reason why martial artists broke the rules. But as long as this person had appeared on the continent, it would be impossible for him to escape. After the battle, the enforcers would have his information. Now, the Dharma Supreme said that there was absolutely no such thing. That meant the identity of this person. It must be fake. Even if it's fake, it must be an expert. Buluching said coldly, only law enforcers and big clans have such experts. This sentence, the Dharma Supreme did not refute. He was also doubting this possibility. If it was someone from a big clan or a law enforcement officer, then to the Dharma Supreme, this matter was even more important than Chuyang, because this meant that in a certain aspect he had already lost control. It's possible. The Dharma Supreme nodded indifferently. Buluching stared at him for a long while before he finally said in a deep voice, Dharma Supreme, you are very weak today. Why do you keep agreeing with me? The Dharma Supreme heaved a long sigh. Shaking his head, he smiled bitterly and said, we were once brothers and good friends, but in these few days we will immediately become mortal enemies. My heart is melancholy. I don't want to argue with people. His gaze was very complicated as he looked at Yu Lingxue, who was standing silently at one side, and said, Brother Yu, there are a few words that I would like to talk to you about. Yu Lingxue also felt a little depressed and said, That's right, I also want to talk to you. Buluching's eyes flashed, and he said indifferently, Dharma Supreme, what can't be said here? Don't force me to reveal your biggest secret. The Dharma Supreme smiled indifferently. If Brother Bu wants to reveal it, why wait until today? Brother Yu and I have been friends for more than 10,000 years. Don't tell me that before the battle of life and death, even the right to talk must be monitored by you? This sentence was said plainly, but the words were sharp. Buluching did not give in and said, But your conversation must be within my sight. Only he knew that the Dharma Supreme now was not Dongfang Badeo. It was a soul that vowed to take revenge. He was afraid that Yu Lingxue would be fooled, so he insisted. The Dharma Supreme smiled bitterly and said, All right. Then he turned to Yu Lingxue and said, Brother Yu, come over here with me. He took the lead and walked to one side. After drifting a few hundred feet, he stopped. Yu Lingxue's white clothes fluttered as he followed behind at a moderate pace. His brows were tightly knitted and his expression was deep and complicated. Snow filled the sky. At this moment, it was already difficult to see beyond 10 feet. After a few hundred feet, there was no one at all. But his divine cognition could still lock on. Buluching snorted. The Dharma Supreme was obviously using a trick. Under normal circumstances, a few hundred feet would naturally be within his sight. But in such heavy snow, how could he see? That man in white walked forward and smiled indifferently. Brother Bu, let's talk. Buluching frowned and laughed coldly. You are not the Dharma Supreme's assistant, are you? The man in white laughed and said with interest, Why do you think so? Buluching narrowed his eyes. Wu Jueching, don't play tricks in front of me. If you want to fight, I will keep you company. Even if you don't want to fight, I will still look for you to fight. The man in white was Wu Jueching. He was surprised that Buluching actually recognized him. He laughed and said, Supreme Martial Artist Bu's temper is indeed as rumored. Very clever to actually be able to detect my aura? Bu Luqing took a deep breath and said, I didn't detect your aura when you hit it. However, you hit it too well. I, Bu Luqing, don't have much wisdom, but I have a heart of the sword. Heart of the sword. Wu Jueqing repeated and smiled suavely. Brother Bu, after the Dharma Supreme nourishes the heavens, I will have a taste of your heart of the sword. Bu Luqing smiled coldly. Teach me when the time comes. Wu Jueqing narrowed his eyes and said, According to the time, Ning Tianya should have reached Tianji City by now. Why isn't he here yet? Bu Luqing held his breath and looked at Wu Jueqing sharply. What do you mean? Wu Jueqing said indifferently, The Dharma Supreme has gone to invite the Moon Breeze couple for a battle. After the Dharma Supreme nourishes the heavens, we will settle all our grievances. Brother Bu, a chance encounter is better than an invitation. Why don't we settle our karma then? He smiled slightly. Karma with Ning Tianya. Bu Luqing laughed viciously and said word by word, What about Ning Tianya? Wu Jueqing said indifferently, After the Dharma Supreme nourishes the heavens, you will know. The sword intent on Bu Luqing's body surged and danced in the air. His gaze also turned into a long sword. Wu Jueqing, fight with me now. Wu Jueqing shook his head. It's not the time yet. When the time comes, we will settle all our grievances together. Let me see what capabilities this sword supremacy, who is ranked #1 in the world, has to be called #1 in the world. Bu Luqing nodded slowly and said, You will see. You will see. I also want you to know that the names of Qin Feng and Lu Yun are not enough to scare people. Wu Jueqing's gaze also became sharp. Is that so? The tribulation of the past is even less of a scare. Bu Luqing looked at him coldly and said, Brother Wu, actually what I despise the most is those who ride on the coattails of their ancestors to act like tyrants and be complacent. Wu Jueqing said indifferently, Is that so? Bu Luqing nodded vigorously. Yes. Back then, the morning breeze blew in the universe, and the clouds drifted in the outer heavens. How impressive was that? That was really sweeping through the heavens and dominating the world. No one dared to look directly at it. But tens of thousands of years later, everything has already changed. If his grandson is still using these 2 sentences to run rampant in the martial world, tell me, wouldn't that be very embarrassing? Wouldn't that be a huge joke? Right? A name that has decayed for tens of thousands of years, Brother Wu. Tell me, what's the point of still shouting about it? Damn it, isn't this digging a grave? Wu Jueqing panted heavily and clenched his fists tightly. His voice was as cold as the underground wind. Brother Bu, 3 days later, you will see the power of these 2 sentences. Bu Luqing laughed coldly. This I can't deny it. I will take on the power of Qin Feng and Lu Yun head-on. But I'm worried. I might not be able to see Wu Jueqing's power. Wu Jueqing stared at him, the veins on his temples pulsing. He said word by word, Brother Bu, you will see it. 3 days later is not too late. In these 3 days, Brother Bu, you have to conserve your energy. When the time comes, Qin Feng and Lu Yun will have no descendants. Bu Luqing pressed on. Don't be called Wu Jueqing anymore. Change your name to Wu Jueho. Swoosh! Wu Jueqing's whip flew up violently. He couldn't hold it in any longer and was about to strike. Bu Luqing had been waiting for this moment. He let out a long howl. Tribulation calming force. Nothing more. Descendant of Qin Feng. Nothing more. Wu Jueqing, looks like you also joined forces with others when you fought Ning Tianya, right? I'm really not looking down on you. With your little cultivation and self-restraint, even I look down on you, let alone injuring Ning Tianya. Ha ha ha. You've been tricked by the tribulation sword master your whole life. Sure enough, you've learned some despicable and shameless ways. Wu Jueqing held the whip with one hand and the braid with the other. His breathing became more and more rapid. He was still forcefully suppressing the anger that was about to erupt. Bu Luqing, 3 days later, you will pay the price. With a flash of sword light, Bu Luqing unsheathed his sword and pointed it at Wu Jueqing. He laughed loudly. Wu Jueqing, why wait for 3 days? Come, Grandpa will send you on your way, lest your ancestors and your tribulation brothers wait too long. Bu Luqing wasn't such a sharp person, but the moment he heard that Ning Tianyao was in danger, he exploded. No matter what, he had to vent his anger. Wu Jueqing raised his head and roared. 3 days later, I will definitely kill you. Suddenly there was a thunderous sound. Wu Jueqing's white figure disappeared in the wind and snow. For the sake of the grand plan, 3 days later, Wu Jueqing chose to tolerate it. But he couldn't tolerate it any longer. What the eye doesn't see, the heart doesn't grieve over. Originally, he was also trying to provoke Bu Luqing into holding back for the final battle 3 days later. Although he was so angry now, he had already achieved his goal. A little impatience spoils great plans. He retreated. Chapter 1101. Bu Luqing's mocking words spread far and wide. Wu Jueqing, who had already gone far away, was so angry that he almost ground his teeth into pieces. He almost couldn't help but turn back to have a showdown, but in the end he managed to hold himself back. His body flew forward as if he was flying, smashing all the mountains, trees, houses, people and beasts along the way into pieces. Bu Luqing looked at Wu Jueqing's departing figure and snorted coldly. So what if he is the successor of Qin Feng? If you dare to hurt old Ning, I'll make sure you die a horrible death in 3 days. If Qin Feng and Lu Yin are sad, they can come and find me. Do you really think that no one dares to touch you just because you're carrying the banner of your ancestor? Phut! Bah! Invincible? Even in the upper 3 heavens, he is still known as invincible. Bu Luqing turned his head and saw that the conversation was still going on. Bu Luqing didn't want to disturb them, so he sat down while swearing, his brows furrowed. Did something really happen to old Ning? On the other side, the Dharma Supreme walked forward with his hands clasped behind his back. Yu Lingxue followed him confidently. The two of them were like a pair of best friends who could talk about anything, strolling in the snow. Brother Yu, this day has finally come. The Dharma Supreme stopped in his tracks and smiled faintly. The heaven-nourishing jade has been successfully cultivated. That's right, Yu Lingxue snorted. I personally witnessed the entire process of refining the heaven-nourishing jade. The Dharma Supreme chuckled. You are very patient. To think that you didn't destroy the refinement of the heaven-nourishing jade. Yu Lingxue shook his head. If the heaven-nourishing jade is destroyed, the Medicine Valley will be devoured and destroyed. The Medicine Valley has been saving lives all these years, saving countless lives. Although I want to destroy it, I can't do so at the cost of the Medicine Valley's destruction. The Dharma Supreme said mockingly, So Brother Yu is actually a man with lofty ideals who cares for the world. Yu Lingxue said furiously, What do you mean? Could it be that, as a Dharma Supreme, you only view the common people of the world as ants? The Dharma Supreme shook his head. That's not the case. It's just that Brother Yu is now acting as the villain's accomplice. That's why I felt the need to speak. Accomplice to the evildoer. Yu Lingxue burst into laughter. Dharma Supreme, your words are really strange. The Dharma Supreme chuckled and said, 10,000 years of rule of law in the heavens. How about that? Over the past 10,000 years, although I, as the Dharma Supreme, can't say that my contributions far surpass those of my ancestors, I can still stabilize the heavens. The heavenly layer aristocratic families kept each other in check, and enforcers attacked in all directions. punishing villains, promoting kindness, and punishing evil. Although there were also black sheep among the law enforcement officers. Once they were discovered, they would be dealt with immediately and never tolerated. Brother Yu, these are all. Do you admit it? Yu Lingxuan nodded. That's right, I admit it. The heavenly layer has been peaceful for 10,000 years. However, the Great War never broke out. All of these were due to the law enforcers, checks and balances. Until now, there were so many supreme martial artists in the heavenly layer. This was the proof. If the war continues, I'm afraid that 80% of the people in these sovereign lands will die early. Do you agree? Yu Lingxue nodded again. That's right. You have contributed greatly to this. I admit it. The Dharma Supreme heaved a long sigh of relief. However, once the Tribulation Sword Master ascends to the heavens, there will be a bloodbath. The great aristocratic families would be razed to the ground. At that time, the flames of war will surely reach the heavens, and the people will be plunged into misery and suffering. Do you agree? Yu Lingxue said, I admit it. Since that's the case, you still want to help the Tribulation Sword Master. If that's not helping the devil, what is it? The Dharma Supreme said lightly. You're taking things out of context. Yu Lingxue said coldly, firstly, the law enforcement officer's duty. For the past 10,000 years, it was to help the Tribulation Sword Master. However, you overturned it. Secondly, if you say that you're doing it for the sake of the world, I can tolerate it. However, you have to touch your conscience and tell me, are you? Yu Lingxue said righteously, you are not. When the Tribulation Sword Master ascends, there will be a bloodbath. That's for sure. However, what's the reason? It's to make use of the blood-red fate energy to nourish the heavens, to let the heavenly layer continue for another 10,000 years. This is something that has been proven to be feasible. Nourishing the heavens after 10,000 years is something that has been proven many times in the Black Blood Forest. Once it reaches 1,000 years, the Black Blood Forest, where the heavenly layer folds, will be soft and about to collapse. Only the Tribulation Sword Master can nourish the heavens. However, you suggested a supreme to nourish the heavens. It has already continued for 10,000 years. However, let me ask you, you said that you can ensure the stability of the heavenly layer for 10,000 years. How do you explain the softness of the Black Blood Forest now? Yu Lingxue said angrily, since 8,000 years ago, some places have already started to collapse. We law enforcement officers have all received reports about these. Why did you ignore them? Why didn't you say that your supreme to nourish the heavens had an effect? At least after the Tribulation Sword Master nourished the heavens, it didn't move for 8,000 years. However, you've already nourished the heavens 8 times. Yet the heavens still collapsed when they should and became soft when they should. Why didn't you do anything about it? 10,000 years ago, we witnessed with our own eyes how the heavens and earth collapsed before the Tribulation Sword Master nourished the heavens. At that time, one collapse would reduce the number of people in the lower 3 heavens by 1/3. At least a few countries would be eliminated from the lower 3 heavens. Millions of people would perish in the upper 3 heavens. One collapse would cause the disappearance of billions of lives. You've seen all these with your own eyes. Now, you're out of your mind to nourish the heavens. However, it's of no use. You're taking the future of the heavenly layer as a joke. If the Tribulation Sword Master fails to nourish the heavens because of you, billions of lives would be lost because of you. The entire heavenly layer would be completely destroyed. This would be your fault. Can you bear the responsibility? As the Dharma Supreme, you've done many things all these years to ensure the peace of the heavenly layer. However, if you cause the destruction of the heavenly layer, no matter how many good deeds you've done, can you live with a clear conscience? Can you bear the responsibility? Yu Lingxue sneered. I know that you've already reached the realm of collapsing the heavens and shattering the void. However, I don't know what method you used to hide your cultivation. However, once the heavenly layer collapses and you release your cultivation, you'll be able to leave this world and live. However, these billions of lives would be doomed. Can you bear the responsibility? You're frighteningly selfish, frighteningly cruel, frighteningly cold-blooded. Yu Lingxue said heavily. The Dharma Supreme looked at Yu Lingxue with admiration. Brother Yu, all these years, I've always thought that you're hot-blooded and honest. I didn't expect you to think so far ahead, Yu Lingxue snorted and asked, somewhat puzzled. Dharma Supreme, let me ask you something. The Dharma Supreme smiled lightly, his black hair fluttering in the snow. He said, You want to ask me, I have everything. I'm basically the Supreme of the world. Even if I support the Tribulation Swordmaster, I'm still the Dharma Supreme. I have no more desires. Why do I have to go against the Tribulation Swordmaster? Yu Lingxue nodded and looked at him seriously. I think there must be a reason. The Dharma Supreme was silent for a long time. Then he said, There is a reason, but I can't tell you. Yu Lingxue nodded and said, However, even if you have your reasons, you shouldn't take the world as a joke. The Dharma Supreme heaved a long sigh. Gazing at the snow, his eyes were filled with deep nostalgia and deep hatred. He said indifferently, All living beings in the world. He said indifferently, What has it got to do with me? Yu Lingxue nodded slowly. All right, the Dharma Supreme said indifferently, Brother Yu, you can see it too. This Dharma Supreme is a joke. However, if Brother Yu wants to destroy it, it's like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Yu Lingxue sneered. If Brother Yu really wants to, I'll give you a chance to take revenge. The Dharma Supreme said indifferently. A chance to take revenge? Yu Lingxue stared blankly. Yes, a chance to take revenge. Not a chance to help the Tribulation Swordmaster. Don't talk to me like you care about the world. It's so annoying. The Dharma Supreme said indifferently. Back then, your master died in my hands. After so many years, you and your wife have always wanted to take revenge, right? Yu Lingxue shuddered. He suddenly looked up. My master died in your hands? The Dharma Supreme said indifferently. Your master was hit by the heartless palm. I was the one who hit him with the heartless palm. Yu Lingxue was suddenly so angry that his face turned red and his whole body trembled. The moment the Dharma Supreme said the words heartless palm, Yu Lingxue knew at once that it was true. Don't blame me. If I didn't kill him, how could I be the Dharma Supreme? The Dharma Supreme smiled gently. However, no matter what, I still understand that you want to take revenge for your master. So I'll give you this chance. Take it as the final compensation for our 10,000 years of brotherhood. Yu Lingxue was so angry that he couldn't speak. After a long time, he said word by word in a trembling voice, I was wondering who could do it so flawlessly. So it's you. The Dharma Supreme looked at him with pity. Poor thing, to be kept in the dark for 10,000 years. Her. 3 days later, after you nourish the sky, I'll be at Mount Qingyun. I'll be waiting for you and your wife. We'll settle our grudges with a battle. Do you dare to come? Yu Lingxue's eyes were red, and he took 2 deep breaths. Mountain of knives and sea of flames. The Dharma Supreme smiled. Even at the cost of my life? Her. I love to see others in grief and indignation, especially powerless grief and indignation. It's even more satisfying. 3 days later, I'll let you have a taste of this, and then I'll personally send you and your wife on your way. Yu Lingxue let out a roar and punched out crazily. The Dharma Supreme caught it with his palm, and his body floated out along with the force of his palm. He floated out for 70 feet, as if he was riding on the clouds in the heavy snow. His faint laughter could be heard faintly. Brother Yu, after 10,000 years of being together, I actually can't bear to kill you. Yu Lingxue let out a sorrowful howl. A loud bang was heard in the snow, and Bu Liuqing's voice could be heard. Dharma Supreme, let me ask you, are you involved in Ning Tianya's matter? The Dharma Supreme chuckled and said, Brother Boo, 3 days later, when you arrive at Mount Xingyun, I'll tell you about Ning Tianya's whereabouts and his last words. I'll also give you a chance to take revenge. Ha ha ha. He let out a long laugh and leaped into the air. He flashed and turned continuously in 10 directions in the air, dodging Bu Liuqing's attack. He leaped to a height of several thousand feet and disappeared into the wind and snow in a flash. His long recitation could be heard in the wind and snow. How many years? A flourishing time. Who truly murdered me? Do you remember the feelings back then were extinguished? How much hatred turned into dust? Go, go, go. Let my heart, let the world down. His voice actually sounded a little desolate. It was as if the Dharma Supreme's black robe and black hair were still fluttering in the wind, walking alone, like a lonely demon god. Bu Liuqing roared, Dharma Supreme! You bastard! The second update is still being edited. Requesting monthly votes. G. Chapter 1102. Under the escort of Feng Yuro and Mo Qingguo, Chuyang finally returned to the Orchard Palace. All the brothers and Wu Qianqian surrounded him worriedly. They were all furious about Chu Yang's injury. Zi Xieching chased everyone out, including Mo Qingguo and Feng Yuro. Only Chuyang and herself were left in the room. Stop pretending. My palm only made you tumble. You're fine. Zi Xieching pouted and said to a certain someone. Chuyang grinned. He originally looked like he was dying, but he suddenly sat up in high spirits. They didn't recognize you, did they? Chuyang asked. How is that possible? Zi Xieching snorted and glared at him. Do you think I'm as useless as you? Chuyang laughed dryly. Hee hee, but your palm was quite ruthless. You made me naked on the spot and flipped me 7 or 8 times in the air, exposing my beautiful body in broad daylight. It's really too tragic. My innocence and reputation were destroyed by you just like that. Zi Xieching rolled her eyes. She had nothing to say about this guy's shamelessness. How is it? This poison. Zi Xieching looked at Chuyang. I'm fine. Chuyang shrugged. The poison has been neutralized, but I have to maintain this condition for the next few days. Zi Xieching nodded understandingly. They may be about to take action, Zi Xieching said softly. I knew it. It's impossible that you didn't realize it. Chuyang was relieved. What do you think? We can only fight. Zi Xieching smiled faintly. I purposely allowed you to reveal my abilities during the auction. I've been waiting for this day. Her beautiful eyes shot out a cold, murderous aura. There are too many ignorant people in the world. There's a need to clean them up. Chuyang smiled bitterly and said, But we have to be careful. They are well aware of your strength. If they still want to fight under such circumstances, then they must have something to rely on. They must have enough confidence to deal with you. Zi Xieching said disapprovingly, Confidence to deal with me? With just them? Chuyang became serious. Don't underestimate them. Zi Xieching snorted. She didn't comment. Once they attack, they will split into 2 groups. There's no way they'll surround us. Chuyang said, because if we're all together, you guys can rush out with us whenever you want to leave. They won't be able to stop us if they insist on stopping us. That's why they want to deal with you. We must set up a specific environment. Chuyang said softly, That's what I'm most worried about. It wasn't their strength. They are definitely not as strong as you, but this environment makes me very worried. A trace of gentleness appeared in Zi Xieching's eyes, but it was quickly concealed. He said, If there is a specific environment, Chuyang, you need to know one thing. What is it? Chuyang asked. A specific environment. Of course, it could temporarily trap me inside. However, they themselves will definitely be trapped inside with me. As long as one of them leaves, I can come out. Zi Xieching said lightly, Even if there's a specific environment with my cultivation, it's not something that a few supreme martial artists can stop. Moreover, there was still Lu Qing and the Moon Breeze couple. Therefore, they would need to mobilize at least 200 supreme martial artists to have a chance of achieving the initial goal. If they wanted to be confident, they would need at least 1,000 supreme martial artists. Only then would they be able to cause me harm. Let me lose my life. Zi Xueqing smiled proudly and looked at Chu Yang lightly. Do you think that there are so many supreme martial artists in the current heavens world? Not to mention just law enforcement officers and big clans? Chu Yang frowned. Not necessarily. Zi Xueqing smiled disdainfully. If they want to make a move, they would definitely split into two groups. The first group would first think of a way to lure all of you out, lead to a specific environment. Then, the second group would then be able to attack us. Chu Yang said solemnly, therefore, if you decide to fight, then don't be distracted and fight with all your might. No matter what they say about us, don't believe them. Zi Xueqing nodded slowly. However, before they have the confidence to get rid of us, they won't deal with all of you. On this point, they should have the confidence. Otherwise, Chu Yang said, after today's battle, both sides will completely fall out with each other and have no more scruples. In the future, there will be no shortcuts. We can only fight our way up step by step. Zi Xueqing nodded slowly. There was a meaningful look in her eyes. No one knew what she was thinking. However, I have something to ask of you, and it's something that you must be careful of. Chu Yang said seriously. Seeing that Chu Yang suddenly became serious, Zi Xueqing couldn't help but feel a chill in her heart. She asked, what is it? When the time comes, one person will appear. It's Wu Jueqing, the descendant of Qin Feng. Chu Yang said seriously, firstly, you have to be careful of his poison. This person was the ancestor of poison techniques tens of thousands of years ago. The poison techniques that Lu is practicing now started from him. I see. Zi Xueqing nodded. Secondly, no matter what weapon he uses, you have to be careful of his sword. Chu Yang said seriously, the sword intent of the Calamity Sword is on him. This is also what I'm most worried about. It's the only thing that can cause fatal harm to you. Zi Xueqing nodded heavily and said in a serious tone, I'll be careful. No matter how arrogant Zi Xueqing was, she didn't dare to look down on the Calamity Sword, because this was the sword of the Emperor that even that deity had to respect and be afraid of. Zi Xueqing's heart was also uneasy about what kind of power it could unleash in its final form. Thirdly, it's what I want to ask of you. Chu Yang said seriously, that sword intent is very important to me. It's even more important to the Calamity Sword. If possible, snatch it. Zi Xueqing thought for a while and said, I can't guarantee that I'll succeed, but I'll try. Chu Yang sat up straight and said seriously, fourthly, if snatching the sword intent is dangerous, then don't do it. You have to promise me this. You also know that if anything happens to you because of this, I'm afraid that my life will be ruined by my inner demons. Chu Yang knew that Zi Xueqing would definitely try. He also hoped that Zi Xueqing would try. However, this was definitely not at the cost of Zi Xueqing's life. Therefore, he used himself to threaten Zi Xueqing. He knew that Zi Xueqing cared a lot about him. Zi Xueqing smiled bitterly and said helplessly, Since you've said so, I can't possibly ruin your life, right? She looked helpless, but a hint of sweetness flashed across her eyes. You're not allowed to get hurt. Chu Yang pressed on, his eyes shining. At least you can't get hurt because of the sword intent. All right. You're so wishy-washy. Zi Xueqing raised her hands in surrender. The two of them looked at each other and laughed. Also, I have something to give you. Chu Yang relaxed himself and said softly, Something to give me? Zi Xueqing raised her eyebrows and asked curiously, What is it? Yes, heavy pills. Chu Yang took out a jade bottle made of purple crystal core and said, This is the heavy pills that I asked the sword spirit to make using the elixirs from the upper realm that you gave me. There's a total of 1. Take 1, and you can quickly recover from your injuries. If you go to the Heaven Imperial Court and take it with the help of the spiritual energy there, your cultivation will also improve by leaps and bounds. You made all the elixirs that I gave you into pills for me. You're giving them back to me? Zi Xieching frowned and looked like she was about to fly into a rage. Only a small part of it, Chu Yang said seriously. That won't do. Zi Xieching was flustered and exasperated. You can't always worry about me, do things for me, and pave the way for me, but not let me do anything for you? Chu Yang laughed bitterly and looked at her seriously. Do you think that I'm so useless? So cowardly? So unworthy? Zi Xieching gritted her teeth and snatched the heavy pills away. She said angrily, You don't have to go on, I'll just accept it. What a petty man. I've never seen someone as petty as you. Just you wait, when I'm stronger than you. I'll definitely not be petty with you. Chu Yang smiled and said, When you're stronger than me. Zi Xieching was stunned for a while. Then she smiled gently and said, as if she was joking, All right, I'll wait for the time when you're stronger than me. Then there needs to be a reward. Chu Yang laughed. If I'm stronger than you, what reward do you have? Zi Xieching laughed and looked at Chu Yang from the side. She seemed to be smiling and yet not smiling. You're really thinking that there'll be such a day? Do you know how many tens of thousands of years it took for me to cultivate my cultivation? And you're only 20 years old this year. No matter how talented you are, do you think that you can catch up with me? Wait until your cultivation reaches the Supreme Being level and you've shattered the void. Then you'll understand that this idea of yours is nothing more than a daydream. What are you laughing at? I'm serious. Chu Yang said seriously, Even if I'm not stronger than you, I should have a goal, right? Zi Xieching still couldn't stop laughing. Haha, you really look down on me. Chu Yang suddenly felt hurt and depressed. All right. If you're stronger than me, Zi Xieching rolled her eyes and said indifferently, Then I'll be on the same level as you. How about that? That won't do. If I'm stronger than you, I should be on the same level. Instead, I should be looking down on you. Why did it become a condition when it comes to you? Chu Yang was very dissatisfied. Zi Xieching snorted and said proudly, All right, if one day your cultivation can be stronger than mine, then I can promise you anything unconditionally. Anything? Chu Yang's eyes lit up. Including spanking? Hee. By then, if I want to return all the spanking you've given me these few days, will you be willing? Zi Xieching blushed, but said with a faint smile, That's right. If you want to return it, of course you can. I'm talking about anything. No matter what you want me to do, or how you want me to do it, I'll promise you. Let me do whatever I want. Chu Yang squinted. Chapter 11:03. Zi Xieching gritted her teeth and said hatefully, Yes, but the prerequisite is that you have to be stronger than me. However, little Chu Yang, this wish of yours will probably become your lifelong dream. So what if I agree to it? Chu Yang smiled mischievously. Deal. Zi Xieching gritted her teeth. But if you are not stronger than me, I will beat you up every time I see you. Chu Yang spread out his hands. Go ahead. It's not like I've been beaten up by you once or twice, Zi Xieching snorted. Chu Yang, what you said to me tonight is a crime of molestation. I don't want to hear it again in the future. Chu Yang said lightly, Don't worry, I won't say it in the future. Wait until I am stronger than you. Zi Xieching snorted softly. It's a deal. I'll keep my word. The two of them slapped their palms together. Chu Yang's eyes were full of challenge, while Zi Xieching's eyes were full of arrogance and disdain. But both of them knew that this was not the other party's true feelings. I have something else for you. Chu Yang took out a piece of heaven-nourishing jade from the tribulation space. This is the heaven-nourishing jade. Until now, I still don't know how to use it. So take it. When you are free, Help me figure out how to use it. Zi Xieching's forced arrogance almost collapsed. She gritted her teeth and took it. Smiling, she said, "All right, I will help you with this. Yes, also, this is a big bucket of spiritual spring water. Take it with you and see if there is any chance in the future to turn the spiritual spring water into the spring of life." Chu Yang took out a big bucket. It was the purple crystal bucket that Chu Luer bathed in the other day. Chu Yang and the sword spirit had turned it into a sealed space filled with spiritual spring water. More than a few 100 kilograms? "All right, I will help you this time." Zi Xieching smiled, her eyes a little dry. She hurriedly circulated her energy to maintain her calm, but her breathing was still a little erratic. "I really don't have anything else." "All right." Chu Yang took out a piece of mysterious ice jade core, a piece of mysterious yang jade core, and a piece of heaven poison jade core. He passed it to Zi Xieching and said, "You can go around and help me analyze what these things are made of when you are free." Zi Xieching chuckled, but her words got stuck in her throat. She turned her face away. This time, she did not say anything and kept the 3 pieces of jade into her storage space. Then he said softly, "I can't help you anymore. You're going to tire me out." Chu Yang laughed and said, "Actually, there's nothing else that I need your help with apart from these few things." Suddenly, he slapped his thigh and said, "Oh, right. There is one more thing that I need you to help me analyze." Zi Xieching said, Chu Yang fished out a piece of purple crystal from his bosom. He covered it with his hand, and it gave off a faint purple light. He said with a puzzled expression, "Look, this thing is very strange. What exactly is it?" Zi Xieching reached out to receive it and said, "What? Purple crystals?" Suddenly, his entire body trembled. Chu Yang's hand was holding a ball of primordial purple vapor that had completely condensed into a substance. He pressed it into Zi Xieching's hand. Once the primordial purple vapor was in Zi Xieching's hand, the life origin energy that she had been cultivating for a long time suddenly recovered. It swallowed this ball of primordial purple vapor at lightning speed. It entered her meridians and circulated around, turning into the purest life origin energy. It disappeared without a trace. Zi Xieching's eyes widened. "Primordial purple vapor?" Chu Yang scratched his head, looking puzzled. "Is this primordial purple vapor? What is primordial purple vapor?" Zi Xieching was angry and anxious. You, this is the life origin energy of heaven and earth. You, such a big ball of substance, and you actually gave it to me? You're the one who needs it the most." Chu Yang blinked mysteriously and chuckled. "I still have a lot. The sword spirit said so. You only need this much. That's why I gave you this. Otherwise, I can give you a lot more." Zi Xieching sighed. "Yes, this ball of primordial purple vapor of yours. Do you know how valuable it is?" She couldn't let Chu Yang speak. She said, "It's just this ball. As long as I go up and use the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to completely digest it, my cultivation that was originally at a bottleneck can be improved further. And this ball of primordial purple vapor of yours has completely recovered all my Tao state energy now." She paused and said, "I'm talking about the Tao state energy that I had before I came to the heavenly continent, not just the Tao state energy that I need now to break through the space barrier. Do you understand?" Chu Yang sucked in a breath of cold air. "This thing is so powerful." Zi Xieching sighed. "This is the life origin of the universe. How can the word powerful describe it?" Chu Yang was sweating. "With your current cultivation, it's not enough to absorb the primordial purple vapor. You must remember, just breathing should not be a problem. It can only cleanse the spirit and remove the impurities in the body. But if you want to use it for cultivation, you must at least reach the supreme grade and break through the barrier between heaven and man. Otherwise, your dantian will be burst by the primordial purple vapor." Chu Yang was sweating. I'm just about to use it for cultivation. Reckless. Zi Xieching looked at Chu Yang with a complicated expression. This time he really owed a lot. The primordial purple vapor was something that people would kill for even in the heavenly imperial court. This little one actually gave him a fist-sized and substantial piece. Luckily, the sword spirit reminded him. If it was just a little more, even he wouldn't be able to bear it. And, unlike ordinary people, with this ball of primordial purple vapor, he could completely. Zi Xieching didn't know what to feel. She knew that Chu Yang had instructed her to use all kinds of methods to give her things and ensure her safety. Seeing that Chu Yang was only smiling, Zi Xieching glared at him. I'll settle this with you the next time we meet. Chu Yang's shoulders shrank. Didn't you just help me with these few things? Just a little help. Look at you losing out. Zi Xieching sighed and said, with this, it'll be even harder for you to catch up with me and become stronger than me. The two of them didn't know when their eyes met. For a long time they didn't speak. Chu Yang only felt that Zi Xieching's eyes were changing. One moment, she was lost, the next moment, she was gentle, and the next moment, she was deep. When he looked at her again, there was a hint of shyness and sweetness. As Chu Yang looked at her, he suddenly said, as if he was in a dream, Big sister, Zi, can I hug you? Zi Xieching didn't say anything. She just looked at him with a twinkle in her eyes, and her long eyelashes fluttered. Chu Yang felt that his lips were a little dry. He stuck out his tongue and licked it unconsciously. Emboldening himself, he gently reached out and pulled Zi Xieching's hand. Chu Yang actually didn't use much strength, but Zi Xieching seemed to be suddenly pulled down by him at this moment. Her body slowly leaned into Chu Yang's arms. Chu Yang's arms wrapped around Zi Xieching's back. He paused for a moment before gently wrapping his arms around her delicate body. He hugged her gently. Zi Xieching sighed softly. Her jade-like face leaned on Chu Yang's shoulder, and she closed her eyes slightly. He was filled with fragrance. For a moment, Chu Yang was somewhat intoxicated, but it was only for a moment before Zi Xieching violently broke free from Chu Yang's arms. She said somewhat frantically, I almost forgot something important. As she said, she grinned and said, It's not early anymore. You should rest. I'll go and see Lu'er. She hurriedly turned and left, as if she was running away. Chu Yang couldn't help but twirl his fingers. It seemed that there was still a trace of warmth and smoothness on his fingertips. Zi Xieching had just walked to the door when Wu Qing and Yu Lingxue landed in the courtyard with a swoosh. Their faces were full of anger. We didn't catch up. We even ate a bellyful of shit. Wu Qing said gloomily. Yu Lingxue's face was ashen and very ugly. He only gave a simple greeting and went into the room to look for Feng Yuro. What happened? Chu Yang sensitively felt that something was wrong. At that time, he had discussed it with Zi Xieching. Once he won, he would be in extreme danger with the heaven-nourishing jade in his hands. Therefore, he let Zi Xieching play the role of a bandit and get rid of the root cause first. When Wu Qing and Yu Lingxue gave chase, they couldn't catch anything at all. Why did they come back like this? The Dharma Supreme invites a battle. Wu Jueqing invites a battle. Wu Liuqing's face was gloomy. After the Dharma Supreme nourishes the heavens, we will battle on Mount Xingyun. Chu Yang said decisively, I'm not going. You can't not go. Wu Liuqing's face was frighteningly ugly. Wu Jueqing ambushed Old Ning. Old Ning's whereabouts are unknown now. I have to get to the bottom of this matter and know what happened to Old Ning. If I don't go and Wu Jueqing also leaves, it will be as difficult as ascending to the heavens to find him again. Chu Yang took a deep breath, and his face became serious. Wu Jueqing ambushed Ning Tianya, but with Ning Tianya's capabilities, even if he can't beat Wu Jueqing, he shouldn't have lost his life, right? Wu Jueqing joined forces with the Dharma Supreme to ambush Ning Tianya. Wu Qing took a deep breath. Logically speaking, even if the two of them joined forces, old Ning should be able to escape with his many tricks. But the Dharma Supreme said it was very serious. He clenched his left hand into a fist and hit his right palm hard. He said that if I go, he will tell me old Ning's last words. Ning Tianya's last words. Chu Yang and Zi Xieching looked at each other. At the same time, they thought of the sword intent. If Wu Jueqing was in the middle of a battle and suddenly released the sword intent while attacking from two sides, Ning Tianya's chances were indeed not high. No matter what, I have to go to this battle. Buluqing gritted his teeth, his eyes somewhat ferocious. If old Ning is still alive, I will also avenge him. If old Ning, I will avenge him even more. Buluqing and Ning Tianya had battled for tens of thousands of years. They had already forged a solid friendship. Otherwise, with their status and arrogance, how could they really accept the same disciple? Now that Ning Tianya was in trouble, Buluqing was undoubtedly the most anxious one. Chu Yang's brows were tightly knitted. He realized the seriousness of this matter. Chapter 11:04. Chu Yang had to admit that the other party's plan had already succeeded. Buluqing's plan was originally the most difficult to move, but now he was the first to be moved and agreed to the duel. With news of Ning Tianya, and bad news at that, Buluqing would crawl over even if he had to break his leg. And once he went, if he could not achieve his goal, Buluqing would rather die than retreat. There was no doubt about this. This meant that Buluqing was already locked in this duel. As long as the other party was strong enough, they could kill Buluqing there. But how could Chu Yang persuade him when faced with such feelings? Chu Yang sighed. You only invited yourself? Ning Tianya said, No, there's also the Moon Breeze couple. The Dharma Supreme invited them to end their 10,000-year feud on the same day and at the same place. 10,000-year feud? Chu Yang asked in surprise. What feud do they have? The Moon Breeze couple's teacher was the previous Dharma Supreme. Buluqing sighed. He died in the hands of this Dharma Supreme. Today, the Dharma Supreme has spoken of this matter clearly. Chu Yang sighed, his mouth full of bitterness. In that case, the Moon Breeze couple has to go. They have to go. Buluqing nodded heavily. And it's also a duel to the death. It's just a duel, and 3 out of the 4 experts on our side have been taken away at the same time. Chu Yang was a little speechless. Haven't you considered that this is a huge trap that's enough to kill all of you? Buluqing looked up at the sky and said indifferently, A real man has to do what he doesn't do and what he must do. It's enough to have a noble heart and a stable conscience. As for other things, if necessary, even if I die 1,000 times, I won't look back. This duel, even if I know it's a trap, I still have to go. Buluqing said word by word. Even though I know that I will die if I go, I still have to go. Chu Yang sighed. He could understand Buluqing and the Moon Breeze couple's decision. Just like him, if the other party had made the duel with the safety of Meng Chaoran, Gudexing and the others, would he have gone? There was no need to doubt it. There was no need to consider it. It was precisely because he understood that he felt powerless, because Chu Yang was certain that as long as the 3 of them went, they would definitely be buried in Mount Qingyun. Previously, he was still considering it. What kind of method did the other party have to use to force these people to the point that they couldn't even escape? But now, it seemed to be a simple matter. For people like the Dharma Supreme and Wu Jueqing, once they agreed to a battle, they would definitely have absolute confidence in winning. It could kill the enemy. Otherwise, they wouldn't have moved at all. Chu Yang, if I unfortunately die, Qingwu, I'll leave him in your care. Buluqing said indifferently, If old Ning is still alive, he will naturally come back. If he is dead, little Wu will only have you in the future. You must not bully her. Chu Yang still hadn't answered. The door to Yu Lingshue's room opened. The Moon Breeze couple led Wu Qianqian out slowly. The husband and wife were dressed in snow-white robes. As they stood in the snow, it was as if they had become one with the world. Feng Yuro said, Chu Yang, I have a presumptuous request. Chu Yang smiled bitterly. Please go ahead. 3 days later, I will head to Mount Xingyun with Zhang Yang, a battle with the Dharma Supreme. This trip bodes ill rather than well. If the two of us die in battle at Mount Xingyun, then I'll leave Qianqian to you. Feng Yuro stared deeply into Chu Yang's eyes. Chu Yang, don't forget your promise to Qianqian. Chu Yang was dumbfounded. He hadn't done anything yet, and 2 people had already come to entrust him with his orphanage. I don't care if you have multiple wives. I don't care how you arrange them. I don't care about your scruples. Feng Yuro, this woman who had always been weak, showed her tough side at this moment. She said decisively, anyway, you have to give Qianqian. Leave a place for her. Let her be happy. Let her be happy. Master, Wu Qianqian called out. Her tears were on the verge of dripping. She was about to cry, but immediately blushed in embarrassment. Chu Yang sighed deeply. Suddenly, he said in an earth-shattering rage, Are you so sure that you will die on this trip? You can't wait to entrust me with your orphanage. Do you know that you are extremely lacking in self-confidence? If you don't even have confidence in yourselves, how can you defeat the enemy and return victorious? Motherfucker, entrust everything to me. If I die, who do I entrust to? Chu Yang was furious. All of you are people who can dominate the world. Don't you have the confidence to return safely after killing all the enemies? You have Lady Z by your side. You won't die. Bu Luqing nodded at Zi Xiecheng and said, Lady Z, the safety of this place is entrusted to you. Zi Xiecheng smiled bitterly. What's the use of entrusting it to me? The 3 of you are the main force. After all, I'm about to leave this continent. If all of you die and I leave, then the few of you left here can only be bullied to death. Zi Xiecheng smiled lightly. Bu Luqing, Feng, and you, the 3 of you have lived for a long time. In these years, you have enemies all over the world, right? And every one of your enemies is not weak. If all of you die and your disciples have not fully matured, think about it. How will they deal with your disciples? Especially when it's such a beautiful female disciple. Even if Chu Yang has 3 heads and 3 arms, he's only a martial saint. Any random, first-grade supreme martial artist would be able to defeat all of them. How many of your enemies are first-grade supreme martial artists? Not to mention more, at least 100? When you go to the battle 3 days later, can you kill all of them? Zi Xiecheng said lightly, You can go and fight, go and kill and have fun. If you die, so be it. If you die, even if the enemy salts your corpses into bacon, you won't feel anything. But have you thought about this? Bu Luqing and Feng, and you broke out in cold sweat. That's right, the 3 of them had countless enemies when they were around. Even if their enemies were right in front of them, they would have to kneel and talk to them. They wouldn't even dare to cough loudly. But what if they weren't around? Only a disciple with weak cultivation would be left behind, and a female disciple at that. The 3 of them didn't dare to think further. If the 3 of them died and Zi Xiecheng left, then what awaited Mo Qingguo, Wu Qianqian, and the rest would definitely be torture and humiliation worse than death. Even Chu Yang and the rest would be the same. It's easy to die if you're generous, but difficult to endure humiliation. Chu Yang heaved a long sigh. Please consider carefully, but this kind of vengeance must be avenged. Bu Luqing gritted his teeth and took a few deep breaths. Our children and grandchildren have their own blessings. Only when they've been through hardships can they become towering trees. We can't possibly protect them forever. Some things will have to be faced sooner or later. Feng and you also nodded solemnly. Chu Yang sighed. What was to come would eventually come. The other party had already figured out the personalities of these few people. The trap that they set was irresistible no matter what. All right, then take care of yourselves. Chu Yang waved his hand coldly. People like us also need to get used to the feeling of being alone and without anyone to depend on as soon as possible. Die cleanly. Buluching and Fong and Yu's faces twitched. They both felt that this little guy really didn't listen to them. At this moment, in such an atmosphere of grief and indignation, they actually had the urge to slap him hard. Then, everyone stayed in the courtyard for a while. Under Chu Yang's urging, they all returned to their own rooms. Chu Yang gave Zi Xieching a look. Brother Bu, Feng, and Yu, I would like to discuss some matters with the three of you. Zi Xieching said knowingly, please wait for me here for a while. Under the puzzled gazes of Buluching and the other two, Zi Xieching turned and returned to her room. Chu Yang snorted and left in a huff. In the room, Chu Yang took out 3 small balls of primordial violet vapor at the fastest speed, giving Zi Xieching a shock. Are you sure you want to do this? Zi Xieching lowered her voice. It's better than watching them die. Chu Yang shrugged his shoulders. Zi Xieching laughed. Chu Yang, you're really not a stingy person. You must know that this kind of thing is also a treasure even in the heavenly imperial court. Giving them these today is enough for them to form their life force origin. As long as they don't die after this battle, it's equivalent to creating a staircase for them to ascend to the heavens. Chu Yang smiled lightly. It's better than us going up alone, right? These few people are very bad-tempered, but I have to admit that they are all good people and very cute. It's better to have fewer people like them die. Zi Xieching laughed. Chu Yang said, but I can't take out these things personally. If I do, all my secrets will be exposed. So, I'll only give Buluching an incomplete version of the heavy pill as a backup. As for Feng and Yu, they only have primordial violet vapor. If they get injured, I'll leave the incomplete version of the heavy pill with you. Once there's a situation, you can tear open the space and go over immediately. Then give it to them immediately. How's that? Zi Xieching said cheerfully, that's for the best. Feng and you are naturally reliable, but they were a classic example of a ruler. A ruler could be easily bullied. Before Chu Yang's power was fully developed, he couldn't take any risks. So, he could only fake Zi Xieching to do these things. With Zi Xieching's cultivation and identity, even if she took out the incomplete version of the heavy pill and said that it was refined by her, no one would doubt it, because she had the power and qualifications. What's more, the heavy pill was a legend. Apart from Tribulation's sword master and Tribulation, there were people who had seen the heavy pill before, but they were not the few people in front of him. When Zi Xieching came out again, her face was a little pale. She walked to the front of the 3 people and said lightly, I'll give the 3 of you some small things to increase your chances of success in this battle. As she said, she flipped her hand and 3 clouds of purple vapor entered the foreheads of the 3 people at lightning speed. Instantly, a cloud of purple vapor rose from the 3 people's bodies. Then they sweated profusely, but it was surprisingly comfortable, as if even their souls and divine senses were purified at this moment. Life force origin? Buluching was knowledgeable and couldn't help but exclaim. Chapter 1105. The moon breeze couple instantly turned pale with fright. This lady Z actually extracted so much life force origin energy and gave it to them? This great kindness, they really didn't know how to repay it. Zi Xieching said indifferently, this is all I can help you with. The 3 of you take care. The 3 of them said gratefully, don't mention it, Lady Z. Today's gift is enough to be engraved in our hearts for life. Zi Xieching turned and was about to leave when she suddenly threw a purple crystal bottle to Buluching. This is for you. You know what this is. Buluching caught it with a complicated expression on his face and said, yes, I know what this is. Zi Xieching was silent for a moment before she said, stay alive. She turned and left. The 3 of them stood in the snow with complicated expressions. After a long time, they all sat cross-legged and started to meditate. Another place. in the secret chamber of the Zhuge clan. The Dharma Supreme sat on a red sandalwood chair, looking down expressionlessly. He said indifferently, "Is everything ready?" Yi Di, who was at the head of the line, replied, "The Yi clan is ready. All the required manpower has also arrived. The Ling clan is ready. The Shao clan is ready. The Shi clan is ready. The clan is ready. The Lan clan is ready. The Chun clan is ready." The last one, Zhuge Hutu, coughed and bowed. "The great nebula divide of heavenly secrets array is ready. The supreme martial artist experts of the Zhuge clan are also ready. We are just waiting for the Dharma Supreme's orders." The Dharma Supreme's deep gaze swept across everyone. He said indifferently, "This time, as a precaution, I have mobilized 50 supreme martial artist experts from the law enforcement officers. In this way, the law enforcement officers have mobilized a total of 300 supreme martial artists. The 8 super clans have a total of 411 supreme martial artists, a total of experts. 711 supreme martial artists are participating in this slaying of Tao operation." The Dharma Supreme's voice was stern. "Including everyone here, Brother Wu and me. There are 771 supreme martial artists. Such a lineup is unprecedented in the heavens. It is also the first time in the history of the heavens that so many experts have gathered together for a grand operation. The strength of the enemy. Unprecedented strength. This is also the appearance of the heavens. The first extreme grade expert. Everyone, don't let your guard down." Zhuge Hutu said, "Lord Dharma Supreme, we have already arranged everything. However, whether or not they will come in, this matter still needs to be discussed." A gentle smile appeared on the Dharma Supreme's face as he said indifferently, "Over there, you have accepted my challenge. You don't have to worry about this. They will definitely come." Ah, Zhuge Hutu was flabbergasted. He did not expect the Dharma Supreme to settle everything without a word. However, everyone must take note of one thing. That disciple of Bu Luqing, that girl in red, if you can capture her alive, try to keep her alive. It would be a pity to kill such an innate spirit meridian. The Dharma Supreme said solemnly. Everyone nodded in agreement and smiled bleakly. Lord Dharma Supreme still loves talent after all. The Dharma Supreme smiled and said indifferently, "Talent must be used by me. Only then can I love it. If not, I still have to kill them. If I nurture a tiger, then I will really fail miserably and embarrass myself." Everyone burst into laughter. Also, that Chu Yang, the heaven-nourishing jade, has already been stolen. Although I don't know who did it, the person who did it is definitely not from Chu Yang's side. This means that the future trouble has been removed. Moreover, Chu Yang has already poisoned. The Dharma Supreme smiled and said, "I will not say more about the importance of this battle. Everyone knows it well. I will only say one thing. There cannot be any mistakes in the slaying of Tao battle." Everyone nodded solemnly. Everyone understood the importance of this battle. If they were defeated with such a lineup, then the fate of the big clans was basically sealed. There would be no hope of a comeback. All right, everyone, disperse and make your preparations. At the same time, prepare for the heaven-nourishing jade 3 days later. The Dharma Supreme waved his hand. Everyone stood up. No matter who it was, their faces were equally solemn and resolute as they walked out. The Dharma Supreme stood with his hands behind his back. Watching everyone leave, he said in a low voice, "This battle. How many heroes have shed their blood for justice? How many heroes have not returned? Everyone, tomorrow night, I will personally host a banquet and drink to my heart's content with my brothers." The 8 second Grandmasters shuddered. They wanted to say something, but didn't in the end. They walked out silently. A few people. Their eyes were already filled with gratitude. Orchard Palace. Chu Yang sat in front of the window. staring at the heavy snow outside. This heavy snow had been falling for a total of 17 days since it started. Nearly half of the residences in Tianji City had already collapsed from the heavy burden. The Zhuge clan was preparing for war and didn't come up with any effective measures. Instead, it was the Diwu clan under the Zhuge clan that spared no effort in providing disaster relief during this period. The door opened. Meng Chaoran walked in with snowflakes all over his body. He smiled and said, "Yang Yang, thinking about the battle 3 days later again?" Chu Yang smiled bitterly. "Teacher, how are you?" "Me. I'm very happy." Meng Chaoran smiled gently. "Your teacher's wife is still unconscious. I just fed her something before she wakes up. I asked Hanwu out for a drink, haha." As he spoke, he took out a plate of peanuts and a few pieces of lotus root from the cupboard with practiced ease. Then he took out a jar of wine and placed it on the table. 2 wine cups were placed opposite each other. Meng Chaoran sat down. He lifted the wine jar and filled both cups with wine. He said calmly, "Yang Yang, actually you don't have to worry about anything. Life and death, it's just a boundary. It's fine as long as you work hard. Victory or defeat is determined by the heavens." Chu Yang smiled bitterly. "If you take things too seriously, you'll care. If you care, you'll feel pressure. When you feel pressure, your heart will feel heavy. When you feel heavy, you'll feel anxious. When you feel anxious, you'll make mistakes." Meng Chaoran said calmly, "Let me tell you something. Being able to accept things doesn't mean being able to let go." "Being able to accept things doesn't mean being able to let go?" Chu Yang murmured. Meng Chaoran was no longer paying attention to him. He raised his cup in invitation. It seemed that there was someone sitting opposite him with a smile on his face. Meng Chaoran smiled, rather happily. "Hanwu, it's still snowing heavily today. Looking at the snowflakes, I thought of your name. Haha, Hanwu in the cold snow. Come, come, come. With such beautiful scenery, how can we not drink?" As he spoke, he drained his cup in one gulp. He leaned over attentively and picked up the wine cup opposite him. He gently splashed the wine on the ground, put it back in place and filled it up again. "Every time I drink with you, you're always indignant, jealous, and scolding me. Haha, you've never admitted that I'm your brother all your life. But now you can't deny it, right?" Cheers. Chu Yang's eyes stung. He said bitterly, "Teacher, there's no need to persuade me." Meng Chaoran waved his hand. "I'm not crazy, nor am I deranged. I know that Hanwu has already passed away, but just because he's gone, it doesn't mean that the relationship is also gone. It's gone, because I'm still here. I'm here, the relationship is here. As long as the relationship is here, the brother is here. As long as the brother is here, we'll drink. We'll enjoy ourselves to the fullest." Meng Chaoran said, "Life and death are all the same." As he spoke, he drank another cup. Then he waved his cup at Hanwu and said with a chuckle, "Don't you agree, Hanwu?" Then Meng Chaoran chuckled. "It's rare that we share the same view. Come on, brother, let's drink. I've always thought that I owed you, but now I realize that I was wrong. I don't owe you, but you owe me. You died a bloody and heroic death, but you made me. Let's not talk about it anymore. Anyway, if there's a next life, you'll have to pay me back." Ha! Chu Yang's heart ached. He could vaguely see that opposite Meng Chaoran, Ling Hanwu's clothes were as white as snow. There was a smile on his face as he raised his cup and drank. The corners of his eyes were full of the joy of a good friend's reunion. Chu Yang only felt a sudden itch in his throat. He held his breath and walked out quietly. He left this space for the 2 brothers who had been through life and death together. He quietly closed the door. From inside, Meng Chaoran's voice could be vaguely heard, as if saying, "What are you worried about?" Chapter 1106. When he walked out, he saw Wu Qianshan standing in the snow. She was dressed in black and looked bloated. He didn't know how long she had been standing in the snow. "You're protecting the 3 of them?" Chu Yang was hit by the incoming snowflakes. He felt his mind go from chaos to clarity in the blink of an eye. Yes, Wu Qianqian looked at the three people who were almost buried in the snow. She said softly, I know they don't need me to protect them, but I still want to do it. I understand how you feel, Chu Yang said quietly. He walked slowly in front of her and patted her. The snowflakes on Wu Qianqian's body fell off. Her feet were obviously higher. Wu Qianqian hugged her shoulders. Her clear eyes looked even more misty in the snow. She looked at Chu Yang in confusion and said, Chu Yang, can I ask you something? Chu Yang said, Go ahead. Wu Qianqian's eyes flashed. She asked softly, The person you said you fell in love with is not Mo Qinggu, is it? Chu Yang was silent for a while. He took a deep breath and said, Yes. Wu Qianqian's eyes widened. Chu Yang, you. Wu Qianqian felt like vomiting blood. You were in the lower 3 heavens. You arrived at Iron Cloud 2.5 years ago, right? Then, you met Mo Qinggu within a few months. I know about this matter. Mo Qinggu is now 13 years old. At that time, she was only 10? You fell in love with her? Wu Qianqian's lips trembled. Never in her wildest dreams would she have thought that her love rival was so strong, so powerful, so peerless, so beautiful. In Wu Qianqian's heart, only Xiexing could completely fit the criteria of her imaginary love rival. But she didn't expect that she would be defeated by a little girl who was still wet behind the ears. No. Not just then. Even now, she was still wet behind the ears. Chu Yang rubbed his nose and smiled bitterly. How should he explain this? Wu Qianqian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She looked at Chu Yang suspiciously and said, Chu Yang, you don't have some kind of fetish? Nonsense. Minister Chu's face turned red. Or perhaps a certain aspect of your mind is still stuck at 11 or 12 years old. Wu Qianqian looked at Chu Yang with her beautiful eyes. The hidden bitterness in her eyes had disappeared without a trace. Instead, it was replaced by amusement and ridicule. There was also a sense of not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Chu Yang was battered and exhausted. This was the first time he had been so embarrassed, especially in front of Wu Qianqian. Ha ha! Wu Qianqian laughed without caring about her image. Chu Yang, you've really surprised me. Cough, 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 cough. Chu Yang rubbed his nose. Then, he pulled Wu Qianqian awkwardly. Let's talk here. Chu Yang pulled Qianqian to Wu Qianqian's room. Chu Yang said with a bitter face, How can there be such a thing? What nonsense are you guessing? Someone heard it. Wu Qianqian snorted and said, What's going on? All of a sudden, a thought flashed across Zhang Xian's mind as he asked, You said that you have already owed someone your entire life. Could it be that you are referring to her? And L, ref equals and quo, and L/NG. It's her. Chu Yang nodded deeply. Wu Qianqian was speechless. He couldn't figure it out. She is only 13 years old. When did you owe her your entire life? There are reasons for this. It's very complicated. Chu Yang said, I will explain it to you if I have time in the future. Wu Qianqian nodded. Then, she suddenly frowned and said somewhat inexplicably, Chu Yang, I have been upset these past few days. It seems that something is going to happen. Moreover, I often dream of my mother. Chu Yang smiled and said, You miss your mother? Wu Qianqian rolled her eyes and said, My mother passed away not long after I was born. Chu Yang replied with an oh. Then he said apologetically, I didn't know about this. Wu Qianqian's eyes were bleak as she said, In my dream, I could feel the warmth of my mother's embrace. My mother told me that she was waiting for me over there. Chu Yang interrupted her and said angrily, What nonsense is this? Wu Qianqian said, But this is a real dream. Chu Yang waved his hand. Dreams are all illusions. I also dreamed that I married all the beauties in the world. Moreover, I did it more than once. But will that really happen? Wu Qianqian sighed. She was somewhat absent-minded. After a long time, she said, Chu Yang, the war is coming. If I die in this war, will you tell others that you owe me a lifetime? Chu Yang was frightened. He shouted angrily, You won't die. This question is very inexplicable. It's simply nonsense. With a bang, Chu Yang pushed open the door and walked out. Wu Qianqian sighed softly in the room. These past few days, she indeed had a strange dream every day. In the dream, she was slowly walking on a dark road. There was no one around. Between the heaven and earth, there was only darkness. She was alone. She was extremely scared. Every time this happened, her mother would be waving at her from afar. Wu Qianqian slowly closed her eyes and muttered, That's the Yellow Springs Road, right? Could it be that I'm very close to that road? Chu Yang rushed out distraught. However, he wasn't really angry. He suddenly remembered a sentence in the past. That old fortune-teller had said something. Yin and Yang must cherish the beauty of the beautiful. Could it be that it would happen here? Chu Yang frowned and quickened his steps toward Zi Xiqing's room. If we strike first and gain the upper hand, what will happen? Once he entered, Chu Yang asked decisively, Strike first and gain the upper hand? Zi Xiqing was startled. We strike first and attack first. Chu Yang said softly, The other party's forces are too scattered. Zi Xiqing frowned and said, The other party is planning a war and an ambush. What we are looking forward to is also a war like this. You must know that I will leave Buluqing and Feng, and you won't be able to follow all of you forever. You still have to walk your own path in the future. If we strike first and can't kill all of them, it will be a terrible disaster. And this war to them is a chance to eliminate us and get rid of the big problem in their hearts. But to us, it's also a way to get things done once and for all. You are now in the open. Your clan is also in the open because of you. If you don't have the power to protect yourself, how can you do it? Zi Xiqing said lightly, I still lean towards the war. I know you are worried that once all of you leave, we won't be their match. But it's too risky to enter the trap and fight passively like this. Chu Yang gritted his teeth and said, Can't we change it? No. Zi Xiqing said firmly. Chu Yang stood for a while, took a deep breath, turned and went out. In a flash, he disappeared into the vast snowstorm. In Zi Xiqing's consciousness, Chu Yang's figure sped through the snowstorm and changed a few times. His entire shape changed, and he rushed in a certain direction like a meteor. Diwu clan. I want to see Diwu Qingru. Chu Yang kicked open the door of the Diwu clan and barged in aggressively. Who are you? Following a loud noise, many people rushed out. One of them looked at Chu Yang in shock and doubt. Tell Diwu Qingru that a sworn friend from the lower three heavens is here to visit. Chu Yang said lightly. Sworn friend? That person looked at Chu Yang in shock and doubt. Go quickly. Chu Yang's eyes widened, and an awe-inspiring aura of a sword saint burst out. Please wait for a moment. That person looked at the shattered door, and his eyes changed. He was afraid of delaying the important matter. Besides, the person in front of him was not someone ordinary guards could deal with. He left in a flash. After a while, he ran back. Lord Qingru invites you to the side courtyard. Side courtyard. Chu Yang tilted his head. Lord Diwu's private courtyard. Under normal circumstances, he will be there and not in the clan. That person nodded and bowed, showing infinite respect. He pointed in the direction. I'll bring you there. After reporting to Diwu Qingru, when Diwu Qingru heard the words sworn friends of the lower three heavens, his expression immediately changed. It could even be clearly seen that his hands trembled for a moment. Then he said, Quick, quick, invite him in. The sooner the better. Diwu Qingru had never shown such urgency. It seemed that this person was really important. In the side courtyard, Chu Yang finally met Diwu Qingru. Diwu Qingru's courtyard was full of snow and there were no signs of cleaning. Diwu Qingru stood in front of the bamboo forest with his hands behind his back, smiling at Chu Yang who walked in. "Go back," Diwu Qingru said to the person leading the way and rewarded him with a piece of purple crystal. That person was overjoyed and turned to leave. "I'm here today to tell you that you and I have never been friends, nor enemies. We have always been rivals." Chu Yang went straight to the point, but rivals can also work together. "So, I'm here today to ask you to do me a favor." Diwu Qingru smiled and said, "Decisive battle." "Yes, I need some information," Chu Yang said indifferently. "But you have to know that the information you want may not be useful." Diwu Qingru smiled. "To some people, there's nothing they can't give up." "I know, but I can't just sit and wait." Chu Yang said, "It's extremely dangerous this time. The heart of a strong person is unpredictable. The Dharma Supreme made use of human nature and pride. Although he knew it was a trap, a strong person could only jump into it, because he couldn't retreat. If he retreated, he would be retreating from friendship, and that would be an inner demon. It may seem simple, but it's very difficult to resolve." Diwu Qingru said slowly, "That's right. This was what Chu Yang was worried about." Diwu Qingru took out the hands behind his back. In his hands was a stack of papers. "This is the information of the people who are currently in Tianji City and can be of some use to them. If you don't come, I will send it to you. However, these can only be of some use and can't affect the overall situation. You should know this in your heart." Diwu Qingru smiled indifferently. "I have already prepared the things that can affect the overall situation for you. That's the real reason why I'm looking for you, even if you don't come." Chapter 1107. Chu Yang nodded heavily. "I know, but even if it's just a little bit, I'll still do it. But what's the real reason that can affect the overall situation that you're talking about?" Diwu Qingru smiled and said meaningfully, "Actually, even if I don't intervene, if it's just a battle like this, they may not win and you may not lose." Chu Yang smiled lightly. "Of course, but I have to fight for every bit of help, even if it's insignificant." Diwu Qingru said, "Yes, but you've already helped me a lot. This time, I don't owe you any favors." Chu Yang laughed out loud. "You deliberately said this because you want me to remember this favor of yours. Fifth, you're too cunning." Diwu Qingru shook his head and smiled. "It's not that I'm cunning, but you think too badly of me." The two laughed in unison. This time the Zhuge clan has transferred a few people from the Diwu clan. Diwu Qingru's eyes flashed slightly. He said, "By then there'll be a Wu character on their bodies." Chu Yang's eyes lit up. "Diwu, this time I must owe you a favor." Diwu Qingru smiled lightly. "I also have my own plans. I've harmed you so many times. I have to let you get back a little. Sending charcoal in the snow is better than adding flowers to brocade." "Good. Goodbye. Thank you very much." Chu Yang clasped his hands and flew up like a goose feather. "I'll remember your help." Diwu Qingru's voice came into his ears. "Don't die." Then he pondered for a while and said, "Are the people transferred from the Diwu clan ready?" A voice in the dark said, "Of course." This time, there's really going to be a change. Diwu Qingru smiled lightly. "If it doesn't work, there'll always be some clues to follow. Once they're discovered, they'll be destroyed together with them. If it succeeds, Diwu will rise. This is a huge gamble." Diwu Qingru stood in the snow and sighed deeply. "This is with the tens of thousands of years of inheritance of the clan and everyone's lives. Together, as the stake, a huge gamble." Chu Yang's figure was hidden in the snow. He changed more than 10 directions, changed more than 10 body movements, and changed more than 10 body shapes. Finally, he quietly entered an inn. Nangong Shifeng and the others were staying here. After Chu Yang came in, he made some urgent arrangements. Let Nangong Shifeng and the rest retreat immediately. The big clans naturally knew that Nangong Shifeng had been collecting information for him during this period of time. After the great battle, no matter what, Nangong and the others would be noticed and retaliated against. This was something that could be predicted. Even now, many people were already paying attention to the movements of Nangong Shifeng and the others. During this period of time, although Nangong Shifeng and the others still looked ugly when they went out, in fact, everyone had been treated well by Chu Yang. He was no different from a normal person. Chu Yang took out a big bag of purple crystals and placed it on the table. Then he took out a few elixirs and said, "Passing wind, the war is about to start. Bring your brothers out of Tianji City immediately. I will contact you. If my side loses, don't ever appear in Jianghu again. These purple crystals are enough for you to live on. Take these pills. They can cure all kinds of poisons. Let's not waste any more words and hurry out of the city. The sooner the better." Nangong Shifeng was excited and said, "Young Master Chu is so righteous. Am I, Nangong Shifeng, such a coward? Let's fight it out with them." Chu Yang patted his shoulder and said, "Don't be rash. Your skills are a little weak. It's not worth it to lose your lives for nothing." He urged them again and again before he finally convinced them, but their eyes were already full of tears. No one was willing to look at an ugly person in the eye except Chu Yang. He treated them sincerely. This feeling of being respected, relied on, and cared for was unforgettable for Nangong Shifeng. Chu Yang asked Wei Wuyan and the others. Only then did he know that they had already left Tianji City, and their whereabouts were unknown. Only then did he feel slightly relieved. Under Chu Yang's arrangement, Nangong Shifeng and the others washed away the color on their faces. Then they disguised themselves and walked out one by one. They went back and forth a few times, bought some food and wine, and placed them on the table. The fragrance of the wine spread far and wide, but Nangong and the others, who should have been in the inn, had already disappeared without a trace. After a long time, Chu Yang jumped up and took a big detour. Then he went back to the Orchard Palace. After he went back, Chu Yang immediately found Dong Wuxian and Rui Batong. The three brothers disguised themselves again. Dressed in white, they disappeared into the wind and snow. "Why do you want to catch these people?" Rui Batong looked at the men and women in his hands and was a little puzzled. Chu Yang took out a piece of paper and looked at it. He said, "This guy gave me really good stuff. These guys are the illegitimate children of several important people in the Zhuge clan. Illegitimate children usually have a kind of love and guilt. So it can tug at their heartstrings even more," Chu Yang said. "Hide these guys well and then go catch others." The three of them ran back and forth in the wind and snow. Until late at night, they actually caught more than 30 people. Among them, there were the illegitimate children of important people in the Zhuge clan, the mistresses and mistresses of certain people in other clans, as well as the contacts of some important business channels. They also followed the directions of Diwu Qingrou's 2 maps and ransacked the 2 secret treasuries of the Zhuge clan. They also robbed 8 shops of the Zhuge clan. They swept away all the important and valuable things. In particular, the few important intelligence contacts were directly killed by the 3 of them. That night, the people in Tianji City were in a state of panic. The Zhuge clan was in a mess that night. There were fights, investigations, crying wives, crying wives. There were people cursing in exasperation. These will be useful, but it won't affect the overall situation, Dong Wuxian said affirmatively. Of course, we're also trying our best. Send out the information of these people. No matter what, let's create chaos for a while first. Chu Yang sneered. Especially when the clan is in chaos, it's impossible for the supreme martial artist experts to not be affected. Even if there's just a little bit of impatience, it will also have an effect. Besides, control the hostages well. If they want to deal with us, they will definitely be led by the Zhuge clan. among these people we control, as long as one of them is the family member of the leading expert of the Zhuge clan. Then we can be in a stalemate for a while. Chu Yang said, with our current strength, we can't help at all in the battle over there, but we have to let them have no worries. Under the efforts of Chu Yang and the others, the entire Tianji city was filled with complaints in the shortest time. In these 2 days, there were curses everywhere. All the big and small people in Tianji city were affected. The business of the Zhuge clan was almost paralyzed. Rumors about every important person flew all over the place. There was even a group of people who were secretly adding fuel to the fire. Many people anxiously finished their clan meetings with heavy hearts. When they returned home, they were badly beaten by their wives. There were even people who killed their wives in anger. At first, the people of the other clans were happy to watch the show. But later on, they realized that the storm was getting worse and worse. When they wanted to stop it, it was already not something that could be done in a day or two. This matter also made Zhuge, a Hutu, a little frustrated and irritable. Although he knew that this was the enemy's trick, he just couldn't control himself from getting angry. In such a torturous situation, the 3rd day finally arrived. Venerable One nourishing the heavens. Early in the morning, the Dharma Supreme and the others were already done with their preparations. They gathered at the entrance of the medicine banquet and stood quietly under the dancing snowflakes. Zhuge Hutu's expression was very bad. His clan brother actually had so many shameful things. This made Zhuge Hutu feel a little ashamed in front of the others. The Dharma Supreme walked out slowly. Sweeping his gaze, he said, "Are you all ready?" "Ready." Everyone present shouted at the same time. The Li clan was absent. The Dharma Supreme had chosen one of his 2 guards to participate in the Dharma Supreme nourishing the heavens. Good. The Dharma Supreme said indifferently, when the array is activated, a hole will appear in the void. Everyone, send these pieces of heaven-nourishing jade into the hole at the same time, and use all the energy in your body to seal the hole. Only when the hole disappears can you withdraw your energy. The Dharma Supreme said indifferently, I will preside over the array. There are 200 supreme martial artists outside. Everyone can do it without worry. Okay. Yi Di and the others nodded solemnly. The Dharma Supreme heaved a long sigh of relief and stood still. The next moment, he suddenly rose into the air and floated in the air, as if he was weightless, slowly flying up. Wherever he flew, the snowflakes would automatically melt away. In the snow-covered sky, his black robe was actually so dazzling. He flew 100 feet into the air. The Dharma Supreme shouted, "Activate the array!" In an instant, 200 experts activated their energy at the same time, activating the array that had already been prepared underground. A dazzling white light suddenly shot out from the ground. It was at least a few feet thick and shone directly on the Dharma Supreme's body. The Dharma Supreme's body was affected by the white light, and his whole body shook. His long hair suddenly stood up and danced in the air. His black robe fluttered violently, and he shot 1,000 feet into the air like a shooting star. His body suddenly emitted a dazzling white light. He shook his arms and shouted, "Heaven, boundless cold, awe-inspiring water, vast mountains, I am willing to turn my body into a tribulation and nourish the heavens with my loyal heart and blood." Before he finished his sentence, as if he had activated a mysterious energy between heaven and earth, the whole world suddenly trembled. The mountains and rivers around Tianji City also trembled at this moment. The trembling became more and more intense. Gradually, from far to the present, from heaven to earth, waves of clear ripples appeared and swept over. The Dharma Supreme shouted, "Heaven have mercy! Activate the nourishing of the heavens!" In midair, there was a loud boom of thunder. It was early in the morning and in the middle of winter, but there was actually thunder rumbling violently. The snowy sky suddenly turned pitch black. A perfectly round hole suddenly appeared in this pitch black land, 1,000 feet above the Dharma Supreme's head. "I will continue to work hard," No matter what, I must finish writing the 10th chapter. Chapter 1108. Every hole that appeared out of nowhere shone with sparkling white light. They formed a huge circle, and in the middle was the Dharma Supreme's figure, standing proudly. The Dharma Supreme let out a long howl, his eyes shooting out a sharp black light and his body emitting a white light, locking onto the hole. Do it! The Dharma Supreme shouted. All the supreme martial artists rose into the air at the same time. When they were 100 feet into the air, that white light connected their bodies together. From this person to that person, the edges and corners were distinct. It was as if a huge quadrilateral had appeared in the air. The heaven-nourishing jade in everyone's hands was emitting a pure white light. A strange rhythm of life was suddenly produced at this moment. The next moment, each of them took up a hole. Yi Di was the first. Xiao Sei was the second. The big clans were arranged according to the order of the tribulation, all the way to the 8th. The supreme martial artist of the law enforcement officers took up the position. Everyone's expressions were stern as they sent the heaven-nourishing jade in their hands into the hole at the same time. At this moment, the heaven-nourishing jade actually emitted a life force that made one's soul tremble. Then it disappeared. However, all the supreme martial artists could clearly feel their hearts softening and trembling violently. Then, each of them went up at the same time, using the position of their hearts to block the hole in front of them. At this moment, all the cultivation in their bodies gushed out violently. White light surrounded the Dharma Supreme as he stood in the center. Streaks of holy white light were emitted from his body, and then streaks of white light were sent back into his body. Throughout this process, the Dharma Supreme kept his eyes closed. However, every strand of his hair was already standing straight, each strand emitting a faint black aura. The next moment, the hole in the sky gradually dimmed. The entrance of the cave seemed to be slowly shrinking back. Then, with a thunderous rumble, both holes disappeared at the same time. All the supreme martial artists vomited blood at the same time and fell from the sky. There was a flash of colorful light in the sky, and then it disappeared without a trace. The Dharma Supreme slowly opened his eyes, a black light flashing in his eyes. An uncontrollable smile appeared at the corners of his mouth as he slowly descended. At the same time, both supreme martial artists felt that something seemed to be missing after this incident. However, upon closer inspection, they realized that nothing was missing. It was just that his internal organs had been severely shaken. Thank you for your hard work. The Dharma Supreme floated down to the ground. With his hands behind his back, he smiled and said, "Everyone must have been shaken up. The injuries this time are not considered light. Everyone, do not treat it lightly. Quickly circulate your energy and recover. There is still a crucial battle tomorrow." As he spoke, he took out a pill and distributed it to everyone. After helping Ji-Zun consume the medicine, he immediately felt a warmth in his heart, and his entire body felt much more comfortable. Under the circulation of his origin energy, he felt that his cultivation had completely recovered in a short period of time. Everyone could not help but feel puzzled, because the Dharma Supreme had said that the injury this time was not considered light. Since it wasn't light, how could it be healed so easily? The Dharma Supreme sighed. Everyone will not be able to detect it yet. However, I would like to remind everyone that when I nourished the heavens earlier, it wasn't just the heaven-nourishing jade or your cultivation. I had also extracted a portion of your life force origin energy. He sighed deeply and exhaled deeply. He clasped his hands behind his back and said with a heavy voice, "Brothers, for the heavenly layer, for the 10,000 years of inheritance of the family. The life essence that you have lost this time may not be recovered. Perhaps it will take a long time to recover. Do you regret it?" They looked at each other and smiled. "I see. It's just a little bit of life force origin energy. Everyone has lived for so long. What's the big deal about losing a little bit of life force origin energy? Moreover, If this action can bring about the destruction of the tribulation and allow our family clans to prosper for another 10,000 years, what's the big deal even if we die? The Dharma Supreme was touched. Good brothers, with a wave of his hand, all the experts on guard hurried over. Escort all the brothers back. Everyone, please take care of yourselves in the battle tomorrow. The Dharma Supreme nourishing the heavens had come to an end. However, the Dharma Supreme paced back and forth the same spot for a long time, as if he was reminiscing and feeling melancholy. His expression was dark and his brows were tightly knitted. Heavy snow fell. The Dharma Supreme's figure walked back and forth in the heavy snow. No one dared to disturb him. They knew that the Dharma Supreme was feeling gratified for the people and the safety of the world at this moment, but also feeling melancholy, therefore. Everyone only quietly stood guard at a distance, silently protecting him. In the heavy snow, the Dharma Supreme followed the traces of nourishing the heavens and actually walked for 4 hours. If one was observant, one would be able to calculate that the Dharma Supreme had walked around the circle of nourishing the heavens for a total of 100 rounds. Then the Dharma Supreme took a deep breath. His face was as white as snow. The next moment, with a puff, he spat out a long stream of black gas. At the same time, thick black smoke came out of his 7 orifices. With a cough, a mouthful of fresh blood was spat out onto the snowy ground. The Dharma Supreme panted for a while and used the back of his hand to gently wipe away the blood at the corner of his mouth. He muttered, "Dongfang Badeo, you are really stubborn. However, you have still been completely erased by me today." Suddenly he laughed strangely and said, "All in all, the life force origin energy of 81 supreme martial artists. It's about time." With a turn of his body, he disappeared without a trace. Until an hour after he disappeared, there was still black gas lingering around here, and it slowly dissipated. Until 3 days after he disappeared, that mouthful of blood was still in the snowy ground, brightly colored. The heavy snow actually couldn't cover it. Dawn. The sky was still dark. Well, strictly speaking, it was still the middle of the night. Chu Yang used his divine senses and felt as if someone had moved in the courtyard. Then it disappeared. A wry smile appeared at the corner of Chu Yang's mouth. Buluching and Moon Breeze had already left. After all, they were experts. If they went in advance, they could at least get a feel of the terrain. They could also give the other party a feeling of, "I have nothing to fear. I am very confident and confident in myself." When he returned last night, Chu Yang had already told Buluching and Moon Breeze not to kill those with the word 5 on their clothes. At the crucial moment, they could break out of the encirclement in the direction of these few people. In the end, the 3 of them burst out laughing. Break out of the encirclement? With such a deep blood feud, were they going to give up just like that? This made Chu Yang extremely speechless. Deep blood feud. But Moon Breeze had already tolerated it for 10,000 years. Even if the truth couldn't be found out for 10,000 years, didn't they still come through? If the Dharma Supreme didn't say anything, wouldn't they be kept in the dark for a lifetime? But why did the Dharma Supreme say it? Wasn't it to kill them? The feud had already lasted for 10,000 years. Couldn't it be done slowly? There was also Buluching. Even if Ning Tianya was dead and you wanted to avenge him, did it have to be today? With your cultivation, you could appear and disappear mysteriously to kill the enemy, couldn't you? But Chu Yang also knew that rather than calling today's battle revenge, it was better to say that he was going to vent his pent-up resentment. If he didn't vent this resentment, no one would feel comfortable. But if he wanted to vent this resentment, he might have to pay the price with his life. A timid knock came from the door. Chu Yang opened the door and saw Emo Chingu hugging the blanket, standing at the door, somewhat cowering. I'm scared." Chu Yang felt pity for her and hurriedly pulled her in. "What's wrong?" "Teacher left just now and told me to take good care of myself. The more I thought about it, the more scared I got. I couldn't sleep." "Emo Chingu," said tearfully, "So I came to look for you. But I slept very late last night. I'm so sleepy." Chu Yang stretched his neck. "Huh. Can I sleep here?" And Mo Chingu looked at him pitifully. "Chu Yang, I'm so scared." Chu Yang's eyes widened. "Huh. Sleep here?" Looking at the little girl's somewhat curvy figure, young Master Chu swallowed and felt his throat dry up. His lower body also felt like it was going to rise up. He hurriedly clamped his legs together and laughed dryly. "Chingu, you're still young now. You should know that there are differences between men and women. This sharing a bed it's precisely because I'm still young that I'm not scared." And Mo Chingu looked at Chu Yang with her round black eyes and giggled. "Brother Chu Yang wouldn't be so beastly, right? Even a little girl like me would want to harm you?" Chu Yang was stunned. This little girl, where did she learn to say such words? On the other side, Mo Chingu had already happily hugged the blanket to the side of the bed. She moved Chu Yang's blanket inwards and placed her own fragrant blanket on the bed. Then she took off her coat. It turned out that she was only wearing a pair of pajamas underneath. "It's so cold." The little girl shivered and dived into the blanket like a fish. She didn't forget to take out her long hair from the blanket and spread it on one side of the pillow. She tilted her head and said, "Chu Yang, aren't you going to sleep?" I'll sleep, sleep, sleep." Chu Yang bent his body and clamped his legs together. With a thud, he clumsily climbed onto the bed. He only felt that he was going to catch fire. "Your posture is so weird." The little girl said, "Aha, weird?" Minister Chu hurriedly wrapped himself tightly in the blanket and heaved a sigh of relief. He only felt that his lower body was as hard as steel and was extremely high-spirited. He couldn't help but complain in his heart. "Little girl, aren't you tormenting me? Weird posture, isn't it all because of you?" The next moment his cheeks itched. The little girl came over and put her red lips next to his ear. She said, "Brother Chu Yang, this call was unexpectedly delicate and soft." Chu Yang heard it and shivered all over. He muttered, "Demon." The next moment the little girl put her head on Chu Yang's pillow. She reached out and grabbed Chu Yang's arm. She stuffed it under her head and then hugged Chu Yang's arm with both hands. She said with infinite happiness, "Ah, I'm not afraid now." "You're not afraid, but I'm afraid." Chu Yang's heart was somewhat powerless. "Chu Yang, do you think my master will win?" Since she was no longer afraid, the little girl began to ask the question she was most concerned about. "He will definitely win." Chu Yang looked straight at the ceiling. His body was as straight as a zombie as he muttered unconsciously, "Really?" The little girl became excited. She raised her head and looked at him with sparkling eyes. Chapter 1109. "Your teacher is the #1 in the world." Chu Yang murmured. "Yes, #1 in the world." It seemed as if these 4 words had given the little girl unlimited confidence. She immediately felt relieved and lay back down. It was unknown what she had thought of, but she giggled twice. Then she turned over and faced Chu Yang. "Chu Yang, what are you thinking about?" "I'm thinking of doing you on the spot." Chu Yang roared in his heart, but he said aggrievedly, Nothing. But your face is so red." The little girl put her hand on Chu Yang's forehead. "Your head is so hot. Is it a fever?" "I'm feverish. My whole body is feverish." Chu Yang murmured in his heart, but he begged for mercy. "Chingu, go to sleep. There may be a battle tomorrow." Mo Chingu nodded and stretched. Suddenly, her eyes turned as if she thought of something. She leaned close to Chu Yang's ear and asked in a low voice, "Chu Yang, do you like women with big breasts?" Mo Chingu's mouth was right next to Chu Yang's ear. Her warm breath blew into his ear. Her breath smelled like orchids. Chu Yang only felt itchy and soft. He almost passed out on the spot. He moaned, "Little girl, don't ask such an impure question." Mo Chingu snorted. Her eyes turned, and she suddenly lifted her blanket. The next moment, she lifted Chu Yang's blanket and giggled. Before Chu Yang could react, she had already burrowed into Chu Yang's blanket. Chu Yang's whole body stiffened. His neck felt cold. The little girl's tender arms had already wrapped around him. She giggled and said, "Chu Yang, hugging you to sleep is the most comfortable." As she said, she rested her head on Chu Yang's chest. Chu Yang grimaced. He quietly moved his body and clamped her with his legs. His breathing became more and more rapid. "You're disobedient. Hurry up and sleep. You want to sleep now." Emo Chingu giggled. She pouted and kissed Chu Yang's mouth with her rosy lips. "Sleep." She closed her eyes. Chu Yang really felt like he was going to die. He was suffocating. He was going to explode. "Your body is getting hotter and hotter," Emo Chingu murmured. Chu Yang felt a weight on his body. The little girl pressed her thighs against his and hugged his neck with both hands. Her head rested on his shoulders, and her thighs pressed heavily against his stomach. She proudly murmured a few words, and then her breathing became light. He was actually about to fall asleep. Chu Yang felt that his whole body was on fire. Seeing that he was about to be burned by the raging flames, he hurriedly recited the tranquil heart technique. He kept thinking about it. However, he was getting more and more upset. His body was sticky and sweaty. Seeing that the little girl seemed to have fallen asleep, Chu Yang slowly loosened his legs. With a conflicted expression, he was completely speechless. How was he going to spend the night? What the hell? Emo Ching Wu frowned and mumbled in dissatisfaction. With his eyes closed, he reached down, grabbed something, and pulled it to the side. Hiss! Chu Yang sucked in a breath of air. He barely managed to turn his body sideways to avoid the sharp edge. Chu Yang himself didn't know how he had managed to get through this night. He counted with his eyes wide open. After counting for 2 hours, his mind slowly calmed down. Then he felt a wave of happiness, peace, and comfort. The person he loved was in his arms. All of his regrets had been made up for. At this point in life, what more could he ask for? Chu Yang sighed blissfully. At this moment, Emo Ching Wu in his arms frowned. There was a pained and confused expression on her face. Her body twisted, as if she was about to wake up, but she didn't. She seemed to be dreaming. Chu Yang hugged her gently and tenderly. The person in his arms calmed down. Chu Yang was about to fall asleep in a daze when he suddenly felt something wet on his chest. At a glance, he saw Emo Ching Wu's eyes. She was crying nonstop, but she obviously hadn't woken up yet. "I'm dreaming again." Chu Yang sighed. Suddenly, his heart trembled. Dreaming again? What kind of dream was she having? Could it be? He saw Emo Ching Wu's mouth open slightly. She gasped for breath and said, "Don't let me leave." Chu Yang held his breath. However, after Emo Ching Wu said this, she didn't speak for a long time. She just kept crying. After a long time, Chu Yang was a little confused. He was about to close his eyes when suddenly his chest tightened. Emo Ching Wu's little hand grabbed his collar tightly. She closed her eyes and cried. Her little hand was so tight that her knuckles turned white, but she refused to let go. Only her tears kept flowing. Chu Yang sighed, just as he was about to embrace her completely in his arms. Emo Ching-gu suddenly exerted more force in his embrace. She grabbed his lapel and said intermittently, "Chu Yang, if there's a next life, you take another look at me. I'm prettier than a sword." Chu Yang's whole body shook. He was dumbfounded. His eyes widened abruptly, but there was no light in his eyes. Only tears flowed quietly. "Ching-wu, have you finally achieved this dream of yours? I'm prettier than a sword. I'm prettier than a sword." Chu Yang's heart began to ache as if it was overturning rivers and seas. Mount Qingyun. This was said to be the place where the stars fell. It was said that when the Almighty was folding the heavens, his movements were a little too big, causing the surrounding stars to fall down neatly. After burning the air, they fell to the sky above the heavens continent. Seeing that the newly folded heavens continent was about to be destroyed, the Almighty was very unhappy. So he waved his hand and collected all these fallen stars. He crumpled them into a ball and threw it on the heavens continent. After this piece was thrown down, it became a mountain range made up entirely of meteorites. The entire mountain range was a single entity. It couldn't be separated at all, and the texture was hard. No divine weapon could separate even a piece of rock the size of a fingernail from Mount Qingyun. Moreover, it was said that this mountain had the power of the stars and was full of mysteries. The reason why the Zhuge clan chose to build a city here was because of the unlimited mysterious power of Mount Qingyun, and the great nebula divide array of heavenly secrets was drawn on Mount Qingyun. Then it activated the secrets of heaven and drew the power of the stars to complete this array. To a certain extent, this great nebula divide array of heavenly secrets was a product of heaven and earth. Moreover, ever since the formation of this array, the Zhuge clan had never succeeded in building another similar array. It could also be said to be the only array in the world. When Buluqing and the Moon Breeze couple set foot on this mountain, the night was hazy. Heavy snow fell. The three of them walked up the mountain step by step, admiring the scenery along the way. I heard that this mountain is the #1 mystical object in the heavens. Yu Lingxue smiled and said, I've been here several times. Even with my cultivation, I can't dig out the rocks on this mountain. It's really hard. Buluqing rolled his eyes. He pointed to the mountain. He said, There's only one thing that I'm curious about now. How did these trees grow in such a hard place? The Moon Breeze couple smiled bitterly in unison. This matter was really inexplicable. Buluqing walked to the front of a tree and smiled lightly. He reached out his palm, and with a snap, this small tree that was as thick as the mouth of a bowl was cut in half. Looking closer, they saw densely packed tree rings at the cut. It was impossible to count them all. They were completely connected. This is an ordinary tree that has grown here for at least 10,000 years, and it's only as thick as the mouth of a bowl, but its weight is comparable to star iron. Buluqing weighed the tree in his palm and said lightly, If it's made into a stick for someone, it can really smash a martial saint to death. He pondered and said, An ordinary tree, just because it grew in a different environment, can cause such an outcome. If it's a human, what will happen? The Moon Breeze couple was also deep in thought. Buluqing waved his hand, and the accumulated snow on the ground was pushed away, revealing the dark stone ground. The pine tree's roots grew in a thin crack, flat and flat. Buluqing bent down, dug his finger into this crack, and pulled forcefully. The crack didn't move at all. Buluqing's finger made a cracking sound. Buluqing retracted his hand and stood up. He said somewhat awkwardly, Did you see that? Mount Qingyun, even with my cultivation, I can't move a single rock. Uft, cough, cough. Feng Euro laughed instantly. Yu Lingxue also couldn't help but laugh. He said, Brother Bu, what I saw was, although this mountain is hard and we can't move it, the soft tree roots can take root in it and grow into a towering tree. So no matter how meticulous a plan is, there will still be loopholes. Buluqing perked up and said, You're right, I wanted to say this just now, but my finger hurt and I forgot. Feng Euro finally laughed, not caring about her image. The three of them laughed together. When they came, they were still a little nervous, but in this laughter, it disappeared without a trace. The three of them, one in front and two behind, walked leisurely towards the peak of the mountain. The Dharma Supreme stood at the peak of the mountain with his hands behind his back. Hearing the laughter coming from the foot of the mountain, a strange smile appeared on his face. How carefree to still be able to laugh at a time like this. At the side, Wu Jueqing sat on a piece of pitch-black rock and said indifferently, They won't be able to laugh soon. The Dharma Supreme laughed and suddenly let out a long whistle, shouting softly, Brother, are you here? Yu Lingxue's voice came from the mountainside. Bah! Dharma Supreme, what right do you have to call me brother? The Dharma Supreme laughed and said, Brother you, more than 10,000 years in exchange for such treatment, it really makes one's heart cold. Even if you insist on supporting the Tribulation Swordmaster, you don't have to be so ruthless, right? Yu Lingxue was furious. He was about to speak when a cold voice came from above. Buluqing, get up here and accept your death. Buluqing flew into a rage and shouted, Wu Jueqing, you despicable person. Why? Are you still thinking of using your ancestors' prestige to bully others? Let me tell you, I won't fall for it. The pitiful supreme martial artist Jinfeng is going to die today. Wu Jueqing's cold voice came down. Buluqing, you can't kill anyone with just your mouth. Buluqing laughed. I can't kill anyone, but I can disgust you. I'm happy to disgust you. Waha. To discuss the descendants of Qin Feng and Lu Yin, it really feels good. Wu Jueqing, who was above, didn't say anything, but a substantial murderous aura gradually condensed and came sweeping towards them. Today is the deputy moderator's, Tian's, birthday. I wish her a happy birthday. However, everyone calls her Dao Dao, and some call her Air Dao or Jing Dao Fart Dao. In short, there are many deputy moderators' names, so I won't list them all here. In short, I wish her a happy birthday. Every year, there will be a day like this. Brother Ao, sure, I'll be happy with you. Brother, happy birthday. G. Chapter 1110. Wu Jueqing's voice was as cold as ice. Come up, let's fight. Buluqing snorted and said, Come down, I'll fight you. There was silence from above again. Buluqing might be straightforward, but he was definitely not stupid. There was obviously a trap and a conspiracy in today's situation. It was one thing for him to come here for Ning Tianya's safety, but it definitely didn't mean that he would foolishly step into the enemy's trap. You go up or I go up. Go up and be tricked by you. I want you to come down. Wu Jueqing said indifferently, You don't dare to come up? Buluqing crossed his arms and stood at the waist of the mountain. He said arrogantly, Do I have to go up just because you ask me to? Who do you think you are? Why, you don't dare to come down. Wu Jueqing laughed. Don't you want to know about Ning Tianya's news? Buluqing laughed. If old Ning is dead, he will be dead even if I go up. If old Ning is still alive, he will still be alive even if I don't go up. Wu Jueqing, I have only one motive for coming here today, and that is to kill you. Wu Jueqing laughed coldly. The two parties, one at the top and one at the waist of the mountain, were actually in a stalemate. At this moment, the Dharma Supreme laughed coldly. The famous Buluqing, the #1 sword supremacy in the world, actually doesn't dare to go up the mountain, doesn't dare to face the enemy's challenge. And the Moon Breeze couple, who dominated the upper 3 heavens together, actually cowered in the face of the enemy who killed their master. Haha, what a joke, what a joke. Yu Lingxue's expression changed. Buluqing stopped him with his gaze and laughed loudly. One of the famous tribulations, the descendant of 2 legendary figures in the heavens, not only is he despicable, he actually doesn't dare to come down the mountain for a battle. Does he not have any other abilities other than using the name of his ancestors to scare people? Having lived for tens of thousands of years, he is actually still a good-for-nothing? No wonder he was used by others for a lifetime, almost becoming mud used to mend the heavens. Of course, the most praiseworthy is still the Dharma Supreme. The Dharma Supreme of a generation actually started to be sarcastic, using insults to provoke others. Do you have any other ideas? Buluqing mocked him with sarcasm. A long howl from the top. Having lived for tens of thousands of years, he was still a good-for-nothing? No wonder he had been used by others for an entire lifetime and had almost become the mud used to mend the heavens. These words had really poked at Wu Jueqing's sore spot. He couldn't hold himself back any longer. With a long roar, his white robe fluttered. His sleeves fluttered. With a loud boom, all the snow on the mountain flew into the air. At the same time, his thin white figure was like a bolt of lightning. It shot down from the top of the mountain. Bu Luqing laughed heartily. You really don't have any self-restraint. You came down on your own just because I provoked you. I looked down on you. Although he said that he was looking down on Bu Luqing, he had already drawn his sword. With the roar of a dragon and a tiger, 10,000 rays of sword light wrapped around Bu Luqing's body and charged toward Wu Jueqing. With this charge, the flashing sword light was like millions of people unsheathing their swords at the same time. The entire Mount Qingyun. The sound of swords rang out in unison. Clang! Bu Luqing was furious. Wu Jueqing, who do you think you are? To think that so many supreme martial artists would be sent out to ambush them for a decisive battle. What a disgrace to our ancestors. Wu Jueqing's face and ears turned red. That sword chime, just now, was the sound of the sword supremacy being unsheathed, and all the swords in the world bowing to it. Wu Jueqing and the Dharma Supreme had thought of countless possibilities, but they had forgotten about this. This had to be the will of the heavens. If the battle had already begun and was in full swing, so many people would come out and besiege them at once. Even if Bu Luqing scolded, he wouldn't have made Wu Jueqing feel so uncomfortable, because at that time, everyone would be in the middle of a battle and be in mortal danger at any time. Who would have the time to think about what it meant? As for after the battle, the winner would be the king, and the loser would be the thief. That was even less of a problem. But that was the problem. The battle had yet to begin, and both sides had yet to warm up. The other side's sword had already caused the swords of hundreds of people on their side to chime at the same time. This was like a hard slap to Wu Jueqing's face. It was so painful that it was unbearable. Yu Lingxue laughed loudly. To think that the two elders, Qin Feng and Lu Yin, were such great heroes back then. Who would have thought that their descendants would actually be such characters? It really makes one sigh for all eternity. Anger rose in Wu Jueqing's heart. His face flushed red. He chuckled. Then sigh while you still can. Suddenly he raised his hands. Both his hands flew in the air. Instantly, the whole area within a radius of several hundred miles was filled with colorless and odorless poisonous gas. Then his white robe fluttered and he pounced on Bu Luqing. Bu Luqing's sword shook. Suddenly, a mountain appeared out of thin air. A sword mountain. It came crashing down on Wu Jueqing crazily. But when Bu Luqing made this move, Wu Jueqing instantly knew that he had been deceived by Ning Tianya that day. Because this attack of Bu Luqing's was not inferior to Ning Tianya's most powerful attack that day. That despicable Ning Tianya. Wu Jueqing cursed in his heart. If not for the fact that he had such a miraculous item like the sword intent, which greatly exceeded Ning Tianya's expectations, he might really have been tricked by Ning Tianya and used to deal with them. The sword aura emitted by Bu Luqing's sword made even Wu Jueqing a little shocked. Once an expert made a move, the truth would be revealed. Wu Jueqing's wrist shook in the air. A long black whip suddenly appeared in the air. With a shake of the whip, it shattered the thousands of snowflakes in the air along with Bu Luqing's sword mountain. Sword light shot out. Bu Luqing swung his sword. It was as if he had split the sky and the earth apart. He laughed loudly. Wu Jueqing, this move shall be called Morning Wind Slash. What do you think? Actually, this move naturally had another name, but Bu Luqing said it deliberately to provoke Wu Jueqing. Arrogant. Wu Jueqing shouted coldly. He lashed out with his whip. The whip shadows formed many small circles in the air, surrounding Bu Luqing's sword light. The long whip coiled and intertwined with the long sword. The two of them suddenly changed from a long-distance attack to a close combat battle. With a bang, Bu Luqing struck with his left palm and Wu Jueqing with his right palm. Boom! The snow on the ground flew up. Bu Luqing's sword shook and he flew into the air. Wu Jueqing followed, closely behind, his long whip coiling wildly. "You are indeed a poison doctor. Even your attacks are poisonous." Bu Luqing swung his left hand. "Don't put on an act in front of me, with your cultivation, before your protective internal energy is broken. This bit of poison won't be able to do anything to you." Wu Jueqing shouted coldly. His attacks became fiercer and fiercer. Bu Luqing laughed loudly. "Descendant of morning wind, you are indeed as smart as a child prodigy." Wu Jueqing shut his mouth and stopped talking nonsense with him. He could tell that this sword supremacy looked cold and ruthless, but the moment he opened his mouth, it was a huge fucking shit pit. Bickering with him was simply infuriating. Bu Luqing attacked the enemy relentlessly with his words, but he had a plan in mind. As he fought, he observed the surrounding terrain at the same time. He wanted to see where he could set up an ambush. He could strike at any time and kill a few people to warm up his hands. The more people he killed, the less an ambush it would be. But he looked around, but he didn't find anything. If it wasn't for the sword chime that told him that there were too many enemies here, he might have thought that there was no one here. Where did they hide? Bu Luqing's thoughts flashed, but his long sword didn't relax. He exchanged blow after blow with Wu Jueqing. In terms of cultivation, Bu Luqing was undoubtedly much inferior to Wu Jueqing. But at this moment, he was actually not at a disadvantage. From the start of the battle until now, the two of them had been fighting in the air 100 feet high. They didn't go down. If they went up, it would be Bu Luqing who listened to Wu Jueqing and went up. But if they went down, it would be Wu Jueqing who was at a disadvantage. Therefore, the two of them fought at a height that was neither too high nor too low. Bu Luqing laughed and flicked his long sword, making a sound like a dragon's roar. He mocked. The descendant of morning wind is nothing more than this. The tribulation of tens of thousands of years is nothing more than this. Wu Jueqing was instantly fuming. It was because he intercepted Ning Tianya that day. Ning Tianya also said the same thing. And not only did he say the same thing, even his tone was the same. How could Wu Jueqing not be angry? It meant that these two fellows didn't care about morning wind at all. Otherwise, they wouldn't have said the same thing. Just as he was about to attack, he suddenly saw Bu Luqing retreat abruptly. Then, with a roll, the sword light trembled and suddenly turned into a bright rainbow. The sword light was round like a barrel, several feet thick, but its length seemed to be endless. Bu Luqing's whole body was hidden in the sword light, and he flew over like a rainbow. Man and sword as one. Wu Jueqing snorted. His long whip danced in the air and shook. With a loud bang, a black epiphyllum suddenly appeared. Wu Jueqing shouted and pushed with both hands. This black epiphyllum met Bu Luqing's man and sword as one. Then the long whip shook and the black epiphyllum flew out one by one. Epiphyllum pistol. This was obviously an ultimate sword technique, but it was used by Wu Jueqing with a whip of a completely different nature, and its power didn't decrease, but increased. Bu Luqing laughed coldly. Epiphyllum pistol can't stop the sword supremacy. Just like that, the epiphyllum broke under his sword one after another. Wu Jueqing waved his whip and used it as a sword. He also used the man and sword as one and rushed forward. Sword supremacy? You're not worthy. The two of them collided with a loud bang. Wu Jueqing did a roll and somersaulted 17 to 18 times in the air, reaching a height of 400 to 500 feet. Bu Luqing, on the other hand, floated out at a slanted angle. His green robes left a white mark in the wind and moon. Wu Jueqing snorted and was about to use his sword intent. He purposely used a battle method that he wasn't good at to fight Bu Luqing just for this moment. Just as he was about to attack, he suddenly felt the wind behind him and a murderous aura. Startled, he hurriedly dashed out. With a thud, Wu Jueqing's shoulder was hit by a sword. His white robes were torn and fresh blood could be seen. He was hit on his calf and fresh blood dripped out. He hurriedly circulated his energy to stop it, but his face was already full of anger and astonishment. Sword light flashed, and the Moon Breeze couple attacked at the same time, attacking Wu Jueqing with their dual swords. Just now, it was actually the husband and wife who joined forces to launch a sneak attack. Be it Wu Jueqing or the Dharma Supreme, even Bu Luqing, they were all greatly surprised by this. No one would have thought that the Moon Breeze couple, who had always been known for their gentlemanly demeanor, would actually launch a sneak attack. Yu Lingshue's expression was calm. Only you guys are allowed to set up despicable traps, but I'm not allowed to launch a sneak attack? What kind of logic is this? 10 chapters. If you can imagine what I look like now, I'll call you brothers. 7 packs of cigarettes and a box and a half of Red Bull in 2 days and 2 nights. But 10 chapters. Got it. Begging for votes. Chapter 11:11. Wu Jueqing was rather exasperated. Unexpectedly, he was hit by 2 swords. Fortunately, he dodged quickly. Otherwise, these 2 swords would have split him into 4 pieces. At this moment, his left shoulder was throbbing with pain, and the veins on his right calf seemed to have been injured. It was him. If it had been anyone else, the 2 slashes to the shoulder and calf would have been enough to take their life. Because of the explosive power attached to the sword qi, no matter where it pierced, a person would be blown to pieces on the spot. Damn it! Wu Jueqing was rather disheveled, because the Moon Breeze couple had taken the initiative and were hunting him down. He had just exchanged a blow with Bu Luqing, and now he was ambushed. Unable to recover his breath, he could only dodge continuously. Moon Breeze's swords were like rainbows as they intensified their attacks. For a time, this one of the tribulations from 40,000 years ago was forced into a difficult situation. Actually, Wu Jueqing didn't even need to take these 2 slashes. However, he believed from the bottom of his heart that a ruler like the Moon Breeze couple would definitely not launch a sneak attack. That was why he wasn't prepared at all. The image of the Moon Breeze couple and their upright style had always been deeply rooted in people's hearts. Even those who hated them the most couldn't help but admit that Moon Breeze was open and above board. They would never do something like using titles as a scheme. But now, the Moon Breeze couple's sneak attack had a miraculous effect. The Dharma Supreme had been keeping watch all this while, originally preparing to launch a sneak attack. Who would have thought that before he could even make a move, the Moon Breeze couple had already started their sneak attack? At this moment, he was so shocked that his mouth was wide open. Suddenly, he laughed wildly. Who would have thought, brother Yu, such a virtuous couple would actually launch a sneak attack in battle? Yu Lingxue sneered and said indifferently, Dharma Supreme, which master of yours taught you that my lord would not know how to launch a sneak attack? Feng Euro said mockingly, Dharma Supreme, you have already ambushed several hundred supreme martial artists here to plot against us. Yet you still want us to have a duel with you? What a joke! The Dharma Supreme's face turned red, not out of embarrassment. It was because of anger. He let out a long laugh and shouted, Since that's the case, I'll join in the fun too. He leaped up and flew towards the Moon Breeze couple. At this moment, Bu Luqing had already flown over on his sword, heading straight for Wu Jueqing. Moon Breeze struck 3 times consecutively, forcing Wu Jueqing into a corner. Then, they retreated at the same time to face the Dharma Supreme. The 5 of them engaged in a fierce battle. But the location of the final battle was still very far away from the nebulous sky, splitting array of heavenly secrets. The Dharma Supreme and Wu Jueqing, however, were not very anxious. There was no point in being anxious. There was still time. Moon Breeze, on the other hand, was really fighting with bloodshot eyes. His beloved teacher had been killed. After being wronged for more than 10,000 years, the truth was finally revealed. And this murder had actually called him brother for more than 10,000 years, this matter. The moment the Moon Breeze couple thought about it, their chests were about to explode from anger. The Dharma Supreme was still teasing them. Brother Yu, Actually, I was also forced to do what I did back then. The Dharma Supreme walked through the sword light with ease and ease, his black robes fluttering in the wind. His voice was even more nonchalant as he said, "Say, your teacher was already so old back then. Even if I don't kill him, he won't live for long, right? Moreover, he occupies the position of the Dharma Supreme. If I don't kill him, how am I going to sit there? I also have my own difficulties. I had no choice." Yu Lingshue's face turned more and more green, the fury in his eyes more and more exuberant. The husband and wife bit their lips tightly, not saying a word as they madly attacked. They couldn't wait to blast this bastard into smithereens with one sword. The sword light was like rain and waterfall, shooting everywhere in the heavy snow. The Dharma Supreme sighed repeatedly, trying his best to incite the duo's anger with his words. Both of them knew that he was trying to provoke them. However, the anger in their hearts was getting stronger and stronger uncontrollably. However, as the battle progressed, both of them also discovered to their surprise that the Dharma Supreme's cultivation was much higher than what they had originally thought. The three of them had been law enforcement officers for more than 10,000 years. Naturally, they often sparred with each other. In the Moon Breeze couple's impression, the Dharma Supreme's cultivation was definitely higher than theirs. If Yu Lingxue were to fight the Dharma Supreme alone, he would definitely not be his match. However, if the husband and wife were to join forces, the Dharma Supreme would not be able to retaliate at all. The Moon Breeze couple was invincible. This was what the Dharma Supreme had said himself. Therefore, the Moon Breeze couple was also full of confidence that if the Dharma Supreme really dared to fight them to the death, he would definitely not gain any advantage. However, they did not expect that in today's battle, the Dharma Supreme would still be able to deal with it calmly even when the husband and wife had already given their all. Although it could not be said to be an understatement, it was still more than enough. What a Dharma Supreme! To have actually hidden his true strength for so many years. Yu Lingxue gritted his teeth. Feng Yuro also looked embarrassed and angry. Looking at it this way, weren't the both of them taken for fools and deceived for so many years? The Dharma Supreme laughed coldly. If I wasn't strong enough, how could I have killed your teacher? Yu Lingxue was instantly enraged. On the other side, the battle between Buluqing and Wu Jueqing had also reached its climax. Buluqing came and went on his sword, going back and forth like the wind. He actually felt infinitely carefree as he fought. Wu Jueqing, Dharma Supreme, you have so many experts lying in ambush. What are you waiting for if you don't come out for a battle? Buluqing's sword was like a rainbow, his aura majestic as he laughed loudly. Wu Jueqing's heart skipped a beat. He raised his voice and shouted. Those above immediately chop off one of Ning Tianya's arms and throw it down. Since Supreme Martial Artist who doesn't believe me, then let him see a token first. Before he finished his sentence, Buluqing shouted, "Fuck you! How dare you!" Sword light flashed, and with a thunderous sound, the snowflakes within a radius of dozens of miles were uniformly shattered. Buluqing had already rushed to the top of the mountain like a shooting star. The Moon Breeze couple was afraid that Buluqing would lose, but also worried that Ning Tianya would really be captured, so they also rushed up. The Dharma Supreme said angrily, "You want to help Buluqing? Not so easy." With a wave of his sleeves, he blocked the two of them. The battle became even more intense. However, the two of them were worried that Buluqing would go up alone. How could they be willing to fight with him? Both of them exerted all their strength, almost rushing up with all their might. The Dharma Supreme blocked repeatedly, his body swaying. Finally, his face turned pale, and he said hatefully, "Even if you go up, what can you do? You're just courting death." The Moon Breeze couple ignored him. They turned into two streaks of sword light and chased up to the top of the mountain at lightning speed. The Dharma Supreme and Wu Jueqing looked at each other and smiled. The original plan was finally halfway to success. The three of them had already reached the top of the mountain. Next, there was only that Zi Xieching left. The two of them followed in a flash. At the top of the mountain, Buluching stood on a protruding rock. He looked around, but actually didn't find a single person. His divine perception also didn't find anything. He couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. The Moon Breeze couple rushed up and asked, "Brother Bu, did you find anything?" "It's very strange." Buluching frowned. "This place blocks the aura and divine perception. There's no way to detect where anyone is hiding. Could it be the power of this Mount Qingyin?" Yu Lingxue said, "Not necessarily. No matter how magical Mount Qingyin is, it's just a mountain. It can't have this kind of effect. Legend has it that the Zhuge clan has a mysterious array with infinite power. In my opinion, it should be the power of an array." "Array? Humph." Buluching stood with his sword. Suddenly, with a long howl, the sword flew out of his hand. It spun in the air and then turned into thousands of streaks of light, falling from the sky and enveloping the entire mountain. Buluching was confident that under such an attack in an instant, every inch of the entire Mount Qingyin would be plowed by the sword light. If someone was hiding, even if he couldn't see it with the naked eye, he couldn't possibly turn his body into air. However, after this move landed, only a series of clanging sounds could be heard. There was actually nothing. Buluching leaped up and caught the sword in his hand. With a serious expression, he said, "Moon Breeze couple, the three of us will be each other's horns. Once an enemy appears, we will go all out to kill them. Don't split up. This place is very strange, so we can't let the enemy take advantage of us." The Moon Breeze couple nodded. Buluching's words were out of consideration for the two of them. With a flash, the Dharma Supreme appeared in front of them, his white robes fluttering. Wu Jueching was also already standing on the highest rock, smiling disdainfully. "Buluching, it's time for you to die." Buluching laughed mockingly. "This is what Supreme Martial Artist Qin Feng taught you. Sneak attacks, making use of arrays, bullying with numbers. These are Supreme Martial Artist Chen Feng's teachings? This old man has really learned a lot." Wu Jueching snorted and said, "For deaths, and you're still speaking so rudely." At this moment, the Dharma Supreme in front of them suddenly chuckled and said, "We're about to part in life and death. From now on, the road to the Yellow Springs is long and dark. Take care of yourselves." Suddenly, he stomped his foot. Under his feet, a black rock slowly sank. The Dharma Supreme laughed and sank into the ground along with the rock. "The three of you on the road to the Yellow Springs, the three of you won't be lonely. I'm relieved." Yu Lingxue stabbed with his sword. The Dharma Supreme had already sunk and the ground returned to its original state. The sword stabbed into the black rock, emitting a flash of fire. Immediately a voice said, "Changes in the heavens, movement of the stars and clouds, splitting the heavens, shaking the earth, slaying the Tao, open." With a swoosh, the whole world suddenly turned pitch black. Immediately, a faint light flashed and the stars in the sky twinkled, densely packed. It was already early in the morning and the sky was just beginning to brighten. However, at this moment, it suddenly returned to darkness. The whole Mount Qingyin suddenly seemed to be spinning. The surrounding darkness also followed suit. Buluching, Feng, and you were shocked at the same time. This was because the three of them could clearly feel that this rotation was real. It was definitely not an illusion. The rotation of heaven and earth became faster and faster. Immediately, shadows and human figures appeared. From all directions, there were human figures rushing in. As the whole mountain rotated, the direction they were rushing in also seemed to be constantly changing. The big clans and the experts of the law enforcement officers finally launched their attacks at this moment. Buluching and the other two shouted and attacked with all their might. In the Orchard Palace, Chu Yang woke up early. Looking at the floating morning fog, he waited in a daze. He seemed to be deep in thought. Zi Xieching was already sitting under the flower rack, her expression gentle and calm. How is it? Chu Yang walked over. They have already started the battle. Zi Xieching used her divine sense to monitor the movements in Mount Qingyun and said slowly, when he woke up today, it was already 5 in the afternoon. His legs were weak and he almost couldn't stand. Damn it, Aunt Feng said. Is the number 1 in the monthly votes so important? Is it worth fighting so hard? I thought for a while and said, actually, the Olympic gold medal is useless in the hands of many people. If you get it, the amount of gold you have is only enough to make a bracelet. However, in the eyes of all the athletes, it is not a gold medal but the number 1 in the world. The number 1 in the monthly votes and the Olympic gold medal cannot be compared. However, my desire for it is like the desire of the athletes for the gold medal. It is the same. To those who have gotten it before, it is at most an additional badge. However, to me, it represents a life goal that I have yet to achieve. So I will fight. G. Begging for monthly votes. G. Chapter 11-12. How's the battle situation? Chu Yang asked with concern. From the looks of it now, Bu Luqing and Wu Jueqing are equally matched. Wu Jueqing has yet to use his ultimate move, nor has he used any of his true trump cards. Therefore, Bu Luqing is no match for Wu Jueqing. The Moon Breeze couple is also no match for the Dharma Supreme. Zi Xieching said, but from the looks of it, the 3 of them are not in danger. If they want to leave, although the other party has the upper hand, they can definitely leave. I'm afraid they won't leave. Chu Yang sighed. I'm afraid they won't leave. Zi Xieching said lightly. At least, they won't leave unless it's a critical moment. Suddenly, she exclaimed and said, they're at the top of the mountain. It's a little strange. Strange? Chu Yang frowned. There's no one at the top of the mountain. Zi Xieching frowned. Could it be a formation? Then she said seriously, they've started fighting. It's indeed a formation. Bu Luqing and the other 2 are in a desperate siege. Chu Yang's heart trembled. Indeed, Zi Xieching frowned slightly. She cut off the divine sense probing over there, turned her head and smiled bitterly. Looks like I have no choice but to take action. This formation has isolated the divine sense. Even if I want to probe, I'll need to expend a lot of energy. Yes. Chu Yang's eyes revealed a complicated look. He said softly, after you take action this time, are you going to leave directly? Zi Xieching turned her head and said lightly, there's no such thing as an eternal banquet. Chu Yang smiled bitterly. That's right. This sentence is extremely accurate. Zi Xieching laughed and said, take care. She paused and said, take care of yourselves. She turned around and looked at the orchard palace longingly. She smiled lightly. She said desolately, hidden in the high clouds, I'll travel the world alone. If we meet again in the clouds. Suddenly, she floated up, her white robe fluttering in the air. She softly added the last sentence. May you sweep away the fallen flowers in Jiangnan. Her slender hands separated, and with a ripping sound, the entire space was torn apart by her. Her body paused, as if she wanted to turn around to take a look. However, she didn't turn around in the end. She let out a faint sigh before her slender figure flashed into the spatial rift and vanished without a trace. A faint sigh came from the crack. Before I leave, I'll kill you until the sky turns red. There was still a faint fragrance in the wind and snow. It was Zi Xieching's aura. Chu Yang was still sitting in front of the stone table with his head lowered. He looked at the surface of the table with rapt attention, as if there were thousands of worlds on the surface of the table. No matter how he looked at it, he couldn't understand it. Finally gone. Chu Yang's mouth was full of bitterness. He chuckled in self-mockery and muttered, we'll meet again in the clouds. Please sweep away the fallen flowers in Jiangnan. Where is Jiangnan? His heart ached as he cursed under his breath. That woman left in such a carefree manner. He stood up, gritted his teeth, and said indifferently, "Don't forget your promise." Then he floated into the snow and clapped his hands. He said, "Everyone come out. The great battle is coming. Let me arrange the battle. This time it's a matter of life and death. Everyone must be careful." Chu Yang's voice was very calm as usual. As for Yu Yunji, he faintly felt a sort of indescribable sadness. However, he controlled himself and deeply suppressed this sadness in the bottom of his heart. The great battle was coming. How could he let his emotions get the better of him? "We'll meet again," Chu Yang said to himself in his heart. On Mount Qingyun, the battle was already in full swing. Buluqing and the other two were fighting fiercely. They didn't retreat at all, moving freely in and out of the formation. They were drenched in blood all the way. The final form of the formation hadn't been activated yet. Now it was filled with human lives. The more than 400 supreme martial artists who formed the formation didn't move. Only about 200 supreme martial artists were fighting with these three people in the formation. There was a hubbub of voices and clashing teeth. Buluqing and the other two were already stained with blood. However, their injuries were far less serious than they looked. It was all the enemy's blood. The Dharma Supreme and Buluqing sat high up and watched, their faces solemn. Buluqing and the other two didn't expect the other party to be so crazy. The Dharma Supreme and the other two didn't expect Buluqing and the other two to be so ferocious. Both parties were beyond their expectations. Seeing the number of casualties gradually increasing, Wu Jueqing frowned. "Dharma Supreme, in our expectations, the cultivation of these three people shouldn't be so strong," Wu Jueqing said indifferently. "Now more than 30 supreme martial artists have already died in the hands of these three people. This is too different from the plan." The Dharma Supreme also frowned and said, "I have sparred with the Moon Breeze couple many times. Although I have been concealing my cultivation level, the Moon Breeze couple have not. In my impression, their cultivation level is much lower than mine. But now it's obvious that they've improved a lot. Compared to me, they're only a little lower. How can this be? And Buluqing's cultivation also seems to be a little higher than Ning Tianya's that day. This is really puzzling." Wu Jueqing snorted and said, "Could it be that they've collectively improved in these few days?" The Dharma Supreme frowned and said, "With that woman around, this matter doesn't seem impossible," Wu Jueqing said decisively. "Absolutely impossible. At this stage, every little bit of improvement requires comprehension of the realm. Every time they comprehend a new realm, it requires years of accumulation. How can they improve to such a level in just a few days? Unless the Dharma Supreme also thought of the same question. The two of them looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. Unless they've obtained a huge amount of life force origin energy. Another scream rang out. Another third-grade supreme martial artist was kicked up by Buluqing. He crashed into a rock, his brains splattering everywhere. The rock was so hard that even Buluqing couldn't move it, much less a third-grade supreme martial artist. Although this Mount Qingyun was extremely hard and prevented Buluqing and the others from escaping by splitting the mountain. Facing the opponent's thunderous attacks, the casualty rate on their side also increased greatly. If they crashed into a rock, they might lose their limbs and break their bodies. Buluqing and the other two maintained a triangular cone formation. Their formation unmoving. No matter how the enemy rushed over or how they fought, the formation of the three men never changed. No matter how many brilliant plans you have. I have my own set of rules. As the fight went on, the three of them actually felt their fighting spirit soar. There was actually a very carefree feeling rising from their hearts. Buluqing had a sword in his right hand and a palm in his left. His legs rose and fell one after another, acting as the sword tip of the triangular cone formation. Sword light flickered and his palms slashed wildly. His feet were even more unrestrained. Relying on his profound cultivation, He didn't care how the enemy attacked. As long as he could reach it, he would kick it. Sabers and swords would be kicked too. As long as they were kicked by him, no matter what kind of saber or sword it was, it would shatter on the spot. The enemy would spurt blood and retreat. Those who were unlucky enough to be kicked by him would lose their lives. On both sides behind him, the Moon Breeze couple's sword light flashed and flashed. Someone would definitely lose their life, rushing over and rushing back. Large batches of supreme martial artists who had already become legends in the heavens fell to the ground just like that. They turned into piles of rotten meat. Ha ha ha! Great! Buluching laughed loudly. They're exhausting our strength. This is a great idea. Yu Lingxue waved his sword, a cold and stern smile on his handsome face. It's not bad. Sooner or later, they will be able to exhaust us to the point where we have no energy left. However, before that, these people are not enough for us to kill. We still need to transfer some more over. Feng Euro smiled and said that's right. The Dharma Supreme is sending people over to be killed. I wonder what his intention is. On the mountain peak, Wu Jueqing frowned. Should we make our move in advance? The Dharma Supreme said indifferently, there's no hurry. It's not a big deal for a few people to die. However, the key is that woman. As long as these people's deaths are worth it, then. It's not a big deal even if more of them die. Wu Jueqing's eyes flashed, and he didn't say anything else. He admitted it, in terms of cold-heartedness, although he had lived for tens of thousands of years more. Compared to the Dharma Supreme in front of him, there was still a certain gap. This fellow on the surface looked like he was benevolent and righteous, but in reality he didn't have any humanity to speak of. The 8 superclans can't be touched. You and I can't move before that woman arrives. The Dharma Supreme frowned and said, if we really have to move, let my 2 guards do it. As he spoke, he waved his hand and said, the 2 of you, go and get intimate with Moon Breeze. 2 figures appeared out of thin air with a swoosh. The next moment, they were on the battlefield. The 2 of them, one with a saber and one with a sword, faced Feng Euro at the same time. It was obvious that the 2 of them had been preparing for a long time. Moreover, they had the same target long ago. The array was dim and there were many enemies. The 2 of them suddenly attacked with all their might, together with a 5th-grade supreme martial artist who rushed over at the same time. Their attacks were like a flash flood. Caught off guard, Feng Euro collided with 8 supreme martial artist experts at the same time. She let out a muffled groan, and her face turned pale. Taking a step back, she looked up at the 2 of them and said angrily, it's you too. The 2 of them said coldly at the same time, that's right, it's us. Master Feng, today is a day of vengeance. We won't rest until one of us is dead. The friendship of the past is gone. Feng Euro snorted. If that's the case, what's the point of talking? Then let's fight. Without another word, she rushed forward with her sword. However, with the addition of these 2, Feng Euro's side was in imminent danger. Moreover, the surrounding supreme martial artists were able to cultivate to this level, which one of them was a fool. Seeing the opportunity, they all attacked Feng Euro, wanting to create a breakthrough here. Both of them are supreme beings. The Dharma Supreme looked at the fierce battle below and said, although they are slightly inferior to the Moon Breeze couple at present, Buluching's fighting spirit is high, while the Moon Breeze couple's spirit has been worn down. Especially Feng Euro, she can no longer maintain her peak. Therefore, the 2 of them attacking Feng Euro now is attacking the enemy's weakness. As long as Feng Euro is injured, Yu Lingxue will definitely be distracted. By then, we will have the absolute upper hand. Although that woman is not here now, she must be somewhere watching this battle. These 3 are the highest figures in the opposing camp. They will definitely not bear to give up. Therefore, they will definitely come to her rescue. By then, ha ha ha, it will be slaying of the Tao. I really don't have any energy left. I'll have a good rest and continue writing tomorrow. My heart kept reminding me to continue the outburst so that I can stabilize myself. However, my body really can't take it anymore. Please, everyone, support our proud world. Let me take a breather. I beg for votes. G. To be continued. Chapter 11:13. Before the Dharma Supreme finished his words, Feng Yuro let out a muffled groan. Blood spurted out from her cherry lips as she staggered backward. Yu Lingshue's clothes were as white as snow. In a flash, he came over and exchanged places with Feng Yuro. His long sword struck out violently. Clang, clang, clang. The continuous sword strikes were like a bolt of lightning, exploding with thunder. Two of the guardians who were attacking Feng Yuro staggered backward as blood flowed out from their 7 orifices. The other 7 people's bodies trembled violently as they spat out blood. Then they flew out like kites with their strings cut and split into pieces in midair. 7 second-grade supreme martial artists were killed by Yu Lingshue's sword. His divine soul had been destroyed. Yu Lingshue's heart ached for his wife's injury. He went all out, and his might was simply unparalleled. However, a gap had finally been opened in the triangular formation of the 3. Yu Lingxue and Bu Luqing kept swapping positions and opponents with the injured Feng Yuro. However, the situation couldn't go back to how it was before. After all, no matter which side it was, the battle was equally intense and cruel. Bu Luqing let out a long howl. His long sword was like a surging storm, rolling out and circling around Yu Lingxue and Feng Yuro. His long sword was like a shining dragon rolling around. In an instant, all the enemies were forced to retreat. Around him, there were more than a dozen corpses. Bu Luqing flashed like a gust of wind and stuffed a purple crystal jade bottle into Yu Lingshue's hands. He shouted, "Give this to your wife. I'll hold it off. You protect her and treat her injuries." With a long laugh, the long sword in his hand surged as he turned around and attacked. He moved quickly and formed a circle of 50 feet around himself, protecting Yu Lingxue and Feng Yuro within. A streak of white light connected into a line. Anyone who dared to enter the circle would be killed by him at the fastest speed. Yu Lingxue didn't dare to be negligent. He flew to Feng Yuro's side, pulled out the cork, and said hurriedly, "Take it." Then he stuffed the medicine into his wife's mouth. Feng Yuro only felt that her internal organs were burning and she was feeling very uncomfortable. Instead, he felt a warm current flowing down his throat. His spirit shook as he asked, "What is this?" No idea. Yu Lingxue stood with his sword in hand, focusing all his attention on protecting his wife. He looked at the surging sword waves all around him, the sharp whistling of sword energy filling the heavens and earth. Bu Luqing, 1 man and 1 sword, blocked the siege of more than 100 supreme martial artists by himself. He actually advanced instead of retreating. Whenever the sword light came into contact with a supreme being, all of them spat out blood as they retreated. Their bodies were riddled with wounds, and those who were slightly closer were directly dismembered. He couldn't help but let out a long sigh. I had always thought that Bu Luqing's and Ning Tianya's cultivations weren't much different from each other, but it seems that the gap between us is very big. Feng Yuro only felt that ever since she took the elixir, her body had become much more relaxed. That warm current was like soft water flowing through her body. All of his wounds were healed. First, the pain in his dantian suddenly disappeared. Then, a warm current floated up from his dantian and entered his meridians. The pain in his meridians was also instantly healed. The wounds on his internal organs also disappeared without a trace, as if spring water had flowed through them. In just a breath's time, his body had actually recovered to its original state. Feng Yuro opened her eyes in disbelief and met Yu Lingshue's concerned eyes. She moved her lips and said, "I've recovered." "Done. So fast." Yu Lingxue cried out in surprise, although he had long known that Bu Liuqing's gift was definitely not ordinary. He had never thought that it would have such a miraculous effect. Feng Yuro raised her sword and attacked. She moved closer to Yu Lingshua's ear and whispered, "Where did you get the heavy pill?" Yu Lingxua was shocked. He said, "Brother Bu gave it to me." Feng Yuro had already rushed to Bu Liuqing's side with her sword and attacked. Yu Lingxua had no time to be shocked. He flew up like a shooting star and occupied another position. With a swing of his sword, he cut a supreme martial artist into two. The triangular formation was formed again. All of the incoming enemies retreated. The pressure on Bu Liuqing was greatly reduced by half. He felt relaxed and laughed. "Sister-in-law, you've recovered?" Feng Yuro smiled and said, "Thank you, Brother Bu, for giving me the elixir." Bu Liuqing smiled and said, "It's not from me, but from Lady Z. If you want to thank someone, thank her." The three of them attacked at the same time. The three arrowheads of the triangular formation pierced outwards. Endless screams were heard. Almost 300 supreme martial artists surrounded them. At this moment, half of them had already died. Yi Di and the rest of the 8 superclans felt as if their hearts were being twisted by knives. These were all the elites of their clans. To die here just like that, if they could be exchanged for some price, it would be fine. But just as they exchanged for Feng Yuro's serious injuries, she actually recovered in the blink of an eye. How could this not make the 8-second grandmasters grit their teeth so hard? At the highest point, Wu Jueqing's white robes were as white as snow. He looked coldly at the battle below. He didn't make a move, but was conserving his energy, waiting for Zi Xieching to come so that he could fight decisively. The only thing he could do now was to continuously release the poisonous fog. Although everyone on his side had the antidote, everyone was well aware that before Bu Liuqing and the other 2 lost their powers, this poisonous fog wouldn't have any effect. The 3 of them had already communicated with the bridge of heaven and earth, and their cultivation was endless. How could it be depleted so easily? The Dharma Supreme was already nowhere to be seen. In another secret place, the Dharma Supreme sat cross-legged. Wisps of white fog with hints of purple were absorbed into his body as he breathed in and out. If experts like Bu Liuqing were here, they would be shocked to see that what the Dharma Supreme was absorbing was the power of life origin. Moreover, it was the life origin of these supreme martial artist experts after they died. So many supreme beings had already died. Of course, many of them had been completely killed. Their souls had been completely destroyed. Some of them had even disappeared along with their life source. However, there were still too many who had been killed directly. Their life source hadn't had time to disappear. It had turned into pure energy and floated between heaven and earth. This portion of energy couldn't be absorbed by humans. In the end, it could only dissipate between heaven and earth, and the last bit of real spirit would also be annihilated and enter the cycle of reincarnation. But the Dharma Supreme was actually able to absorb it now. And this way, this portion of supreme martial artists could be considered as having their spirits completely destroyed. The number of supreme martial artists besieging the 3 gradually decreased. Suddenly, a voice sounded in the ears of Yi Di and the rest. "Everyone, please make your move." It was the Dharma Supreme's voice. With a long howl, Xiaosei came out and was the first to make his move. The autumn wind rustles again. Unsheathing the sword, the sky is colorless. Supreme martial artist Bu, Xiaosei is here to learn from you. Xiaosei unsheathed his sword, and the autumn wind rose and fell for thousands of miles, exuding a desolate and vast aura. Suddenly it filled heaven and earth. The sword was like autumn water, wrapped in the autumn wind and autumn clouds. The sword slashed horizontally at Bu Liuqing. "So Xiaosei! So it's already a supreme martial artist." Bu Liuqing's eyebrows twitched, and the sword light shook. With a loud bang, it met Xiaosei's sword. Xiaosei's body shook, and he flipped in the air. Then, another wave of autumn water came quietly. His body retreated, but the sword light was advancing. "So Xiaosei!" Bu Liuqing was energized. and his sword flew, facing Xiao Sei and the other 5 supreme martial artists at the same time, riding the wind, drifting to the 4 seas to disperse Qingqiu. Supreme martial artist you, I'm here to learn from you. Qingqiu laughed. His body was as elegant as the clouds, and he went straight for you, Lingxue. The night sky is dark and gloomy. In the heavens there are emperors. Yi Di came quietly, as if the night sky was even more solemn. Supreme martial artist Feng, Yi Di is here to learn from you. With the addition of the 3 second grandmasters, the pressure on Buluqing and the rest increased greatly. Yi Di and Xiao Sei were both second-grade supreme martial artists, and they were conserving their energy. With this, they were almost on par with Yu Lingxue and Feng Yuro after a long battle. Other than Xiao Sei, who was suppressed by Buluqing, the other 2 sides were already at a disadvantage. Supreme martial artist Bu, sorry to offend you. A gust of extremely cold air seemed to come from the snowy mountains. Ling Fengyin joined the battle and attacked Buluqing from both sides. Then Lan Muxue also joined the battle with his sword. A fierce wind came from behind. Supreme martial artist Bu, Shi Jing is here too. 4 second grandmasters, 3 8th grade peak level, 1 second grade supreme martial artist, together with more than 10 upper grade supreme martial artists, besieged Buluqing. Buluqing only felt the pressure getting heavier and heavier. He laughed loudly. Great, great. Wu Jueqing, it's so easy. Why don't you come and snatch it? This is your upbringing, ha ha ha. Wu Jueqing snorted. Buluqing, you can talk after you've dealt with them. Then Qin Mengqi flew out and attacked Yu Lingxue together with Qingqiu. The Dharma Supreme's 2 guardians joined the battle again, besieging Feng Yuro. Instantly, the battle turned into a miserable one. Among the 8 second grandmasters, only Zhuge Hutu had not joined the battle. He had to preside over the array and could not join the battle. However, even so, the pressure on Buluqing and the other 2 had increased by more than 3 times at the same time. Buluqing could still handle it, but Yu Lingxue and Feng Yuro were already struggling. They were at a disadvantage in the overall battle. Hey! With a muffled groan, blood flowed from the corner of Yu Lingxue's mouth. Opposite him, Qingqiu retreated while vomiting blood. She had exchanged injuries for injuries. She had exchanged her injuries for Yu Lingxue's injuries. Yu Lingxue drew his sword and shouted, Dharma Supreme, aren't you coming? Qin Mengqi took advantage of the situation and rushed forward. More than 10 supreme martial artists attacked at the same time. We don't need the Dharma Supreme to deal with you. At the same time, Feng Yuro staggered backward, but her shoulder was hit by Yi Di's palm. The triangular battle formation collapsed. Yi Di and the rest did not show mercy, and their attacks became fiercer and fiercer. The 2 guardians' faces darkened, and every move was fatal. In the chaotic land, Yi Di rose into the air and shouted, Dripping blood battle technique! With a wild shout, the situation changed instantly. A supreme martial artist of the Yi clan shouted and rushed toward Yu Lingxue with his sword. Yu Lingxue snorted and stabbed his sword. That person did not dodge, and the sword went deep into his heart. However, that person actually reached out and wrapped his arm around the sword like a rope, but his body continued to rush toward Yu Lingxue fiercely. Around him, there were people with arms wide open, desperately hugging him. Yu Lingxue was furious and kicked out. Another person met his kick with his chest. At the same time, blood spurted out, but he hugged Yu Lingxue's leg tightly. Yu Lingxue's sword shook violently, and he exerted strength in his leg. With a boom, the person on the sword was torn into pieces, and the person under his leg was also turned into a pile of flesh and blood. However, at this moment, his back, shoulders, and thighs were all attacked at the same time. The dripping blood battle technique was to trade one's life for another. Even if you don't want my life, you will let others take yours. My monthly votes have been exceeded. Please give me monthly votes. Gee, by the way, my birthday is on the 2nd day of the month. The 10th day has long passed. According to the village rules, we only celebrate the lunar calendar and not the solar calendar. Haha. Therefore, please don't give me any more birthday red packets. If you do, you will really feel guilty.